Hello and welcome. It's time for the women's marathon here on the glorious Corniche of Doha, the capital of Qatar. Well, let's take a look at the course here in Doha. It is that beautiful half-moon shaped bay that the Corniche hugs, and the athletes will do too. The Corniche itself is 7 kilometers long, but they use a 3.5 kilometer long section of it for this race, and the up and down journey as they head south at this stage from the start line. The up and down journey is 7 kilometers in total each lap. And of course, they will negotiate just over 6 laps to make the full marathon distance. As they head north with the sea to their right, they will hopefully feel that growing breeze off the ocean, famed in years gone by for its pearl divers. As they head up towards the northern turning point near the Sheraton Hotel, they will be approaching the completion of the first full lap. Of course, there are more drinks out on the course than would normally be the case for a marathon. We will discuss that later on. And as they go through the start line and to the finish line there, after 1 lap, they'll have 5 more full laps to run. Well, the start just some 7 minutes or so away. Well, it's a clear night. Visibility indeed, much better than on the last few nights. Slight breeze from the northeast, that is coming off the ocean at 5 kilometers per hour, 32 degrees centigrade. Yes, it's warm, but that's very common for major championship marathons. Don't forget, major championships normally held in track and field athletics in August. Well, there are the athletes who will be competing, 69 of them from 41 nations. And the vast majority of them, of course, will have acclimatized for these conditions. They've known for a long, long time that these World Championships would be in Arabia towards the end of the summer. And while it's been sweltering hot over the last few months here, and we're on the downslope of the high weather window, it is still a warm evening. There's a couple of the American lineup, Grona and Dimov, more of them later on. Well, the world record by Mary Kaitani set in London a couple of years ago, 2:17:01. That's a women's only world record. The course record, or championship record, I say, set by Paula Radcliffe in Helsinki back in 2005. Chepngetich is in the field, the world #1 this year. Well, that was a lovely sight across the city of Doha, and there has been a haze over the last few nights. The sight was good for me because it shows that it's a clearer night. The breeze, I think, has cleared the air a little bit. There's a cold, wet towel around the neck of Dimov, the American there. That's Carrie Dimov, who is a 2:31 performer, but it is a very high caliber field with many, many athletes who have broken 2:30. Well, let's take a look at some of those athletes now. You can see a Chelimo, they're third up on that first page. Rose Chelimo, she is the defending champion for Bahrain. Matsuronak of Belarus, too, on that page. She is the European champion. Golesh Mirand here for Canada, along with Tessier. And Chiren, Li and Ma for China. May spring a surprise. The Chinese, on the odd occasion, have produced some very, very special marathon runners. The Ethiopians are expected to be superbly strong. Ruti Aga in the top 10 all-time. Demise and Dereje, too, will be very, very strong compatriots for her. Charlotte Purdue for Great Britain in fine form with a 2:25 in London this year. The Japanese, well, they are always strong and consistent, but they had their trials for the Olympic Games a couple of weeks back. So the bigger names from China chose to run that and not these championships. And Johannes for Namibia, she is the Commonwealth champion. And the Swedes, well, they may well understandably struggle in these conditions. Bruce, Dimov and Grona, that's a US trio. Abe Legesse, well, a controversial athlete who in her time has set track world records, has only run a couple of marathons. We shall see how she goes in the colours of Turkey. And the Kenyans, of course, will be a massive force here. Their trio is particularly strong, and it includes the athlete who has taken consecutive world titles in 2011 and 2013, Edna Kipling, nearly 40 years old now, a veteran of 22 marathons, but very, very experienced and such a clever racer as well. Look out too for her teammates Chepngetich, who is a 2:21 performer, and Ruth Chepngetich, the world #1 this year. Chepngetich indeed is the third fastest athlete in history, and at the age of 25 only has 4 marathons under her belt. And of course, this race tonight will be a real test of a racing nous. It's going to be a cerebral test. It's not going to be one of those major city races with pacemakers leading out at breathtaking tempo and helping the athletes settle down to a steady equilibrium or balance of pace through the first half and projecting them to a very fast time in near ideal conditions. These are not perfect conditions for marathon running, and there are of course no pacemakers. This is a true race. Well, the athletes lining up with the start just a minute or two away, and a chance for myself, Tim Hutchings, to introduce the athlete beside me, Mara Yamauchi, who has raced in the World Championships twice, has placed 6th in the Olympic Games. That was in Beijing 2008. And Mara, I know you'll be fascinated to watch this one unfold. There is Edna Kipling, so experienced, a former winner of Boston, New York and London marathons. She's been world class for over 20 years, has Edna Kipling. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of her over the next couple of hours. Matsurana of Belarus, the European champion from Berlin last year, formerly a race walker. She was 5th at the Rio Olympic Games, the 30-year-old. Lona Chemtai-Salpeter, now she could be a real threat to the East Africans, the Kenyans and Ethiopians. She is a former Kenyan, but she runs in the colours of Israel now. And 2:19 earlier on this year, in May, that was in Prague, the Czech capital, makes her a real threat. Dereje of Ethiopia. Well, she's a 2:19 athlete at her best. That was last year when she won Dubai in a then course record. She followed that up with 2nd in Chicago in October last year. So she has real consistency. 3rd in London this year. She could be a potential champion. There is Chepngetich. On paper, starts as the favourite, of course. Only done 4 marathons, though, relatively inexperienced. What sort of shape will she bring to the races here in Doha? And the reigning champion, running for Bahrain, the former Kenyan, Rose Chelimo. She's a 2:22 performer. 2nd in Boston back in 2017. 8th at the Rio Olympic Games. Took gold, of course, 2 years ago in London in far more friendly conditions than these. But it is a leveler, having to race in conditions like this. It will be fascinating to see this race unfold. Will they go out hard? Will somebody try and break away? Will they go out slowly, as I expect, and turn it into a tactical affair? Mara Yamauchi beside me, chomping at the bit to get talking about this race. And Mara, I'm sure you feel as though you'd like to be out there. That start gun is just seconds away.
Absolutely. I wish I was running.
Well, Sebastian Cohen, the other dignitaries, assisted with a bit of convenient local transport to the best viewing position. A man who has spent his first 4 years as president of the IAAF, tidying up many of the challenges he inherited from the previous regime, but he was unanimously voted into another term of office just 24 hours ago, and that was very good news for the sport of athletics. His Highness the Emir of the State of Qatar will get the athletes underway. 69 starters then for this Women's World Championship marathon race here along the Corniche in Doha.
On your mark, stand by, 2 seconds.
So they are underway then, the longest, most grueling running event of any World Championships or Olympic Games. Of course, the walkers on a smaller section of this strip of the Corniche will negotiate a 50-kilometer challenge, both men and women, in coming days. But away they go, no pacemakers, and as expected, Mara, that pace looks pretty timid for the first couple of 100 meters. They've got to cross this section between the start line and the finish line, 195 meters. When they get to it, next time you see them go in a second over this yellow line, the timing mat at the finish line, they will have exactly 6 laps to run.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 32 degrees at the moment. The weather in Doha this week has been famous with the heat and humidity. So, as we expected, the runners going off at a reasonably pedestrian pace. I think there's an element of who's going to take it on, who's going to be brave enough to set the pace. But in conditions like this, not that conducive to fast times. It's going to be a very tactical race. Having said that, we have had very hot championships before. Daegu in 2011, Moscow 2013, Osaka 2007. And those marathons were won in high 220s, 230, so not super slow. So some athletes already grabbing sponges there.
Well, isn't that amazing? 1.5 minutes into the race, and athletes already getting sponges with cold water to douse themselves.
Of course, being a championship race, there are no pacemakers present today, so it's entirely up to the athletes who sets the pace, who wants to go to the front and take it on.
Many of the main protagonists already to the fore. You can see Kipling to the extreme right of picture, just behind that white vest of the Israeli colours of Salpeta. Dereje is there, one of that very strong Ethiopian trio. Trofimova is there as well for
Trofimova, one of the neutral Russian athletes.
Yes, authorised neutral athletes. Russia, of course, still banned. And they're banned by the IAAF, extended at their Congress over the last couple of days. I did wonder whether or not somebody tonight might try and break away in the early stages, get a gap on the field, and then settle down to their own tempo. The only way I can think that could possibly work, Mara, is if it's a big name with a lot of experience and strength, and they get a decent gap in the field. It's got to be a psychologically significant gap as well as physically. So I'm thinking 200 meters or more. There's no point in being 50 meters ahead and going at the same speed as the pack, because they will eventually, of course, hoover you up.
Yeah, I mean, these first few kilometers are very much about testing yourself in the conditions, seeing how the race unfolds. I'm not surprised that we haven't seen anybody really take the race out quickly. I mean, gaps like this, sometimes small gaps like this do develop occasionally in the early stages of the race, but Trofimova there in the lead, for her to lead an entire marathon on her own in conditions like this, I think is very ambitious.
Well, let's just take a look at Trofimova's card. She's 31 years old. She's run 13 marathons, so has plenty of experience. Most of her marathons in Russia or in Eastern Europe, at least. She is a 2:24 performer, although that was 4 years ago. And you have to remember that world class for marathon runners begins at, around at 2:30, I suppose, and then super world class is anything under 2:20. They've just gone through 1 kilometer in around 3:50, something in that sort of order. As you can see that in the background, that distance mark has 1 kilometer, 8 kilometers, 15 kilometers, and so on, because to the inch, this is to the centimeter, this is a 7-kilometer circuit they're negotiating.
So Trofimova looking very confident there, taking it out. Edna Kipling, one of the strongest athletes in this field, a 2-time champion from Daegu 2011, and silver medalist last time in London. She tends to not feature at all in the first half of these races, keeps her energy, saves her energy, and then comes through in the second half.
Well, Trofimova, very experienced. She's won the Russian Marathon Championships in 2015, last year and this year, 3 times the Russian Marathon champion. So she knows what she's doing, and this is very clearly a plan on the part of the Russian. She's only run 2:31 this year. That was in Kazan to take that Russian title. But she and her coaches will have sat down and discussed this long and intensely. And she clearly thinks, right, let's clear out. Let's just see what'll happen. And they've got up to the southern end, or down to the southern end, I should say, of the course. The southern end of the Corniche. Negotiate that nice, gentle left-hand turn, which won't slow them down very much at all. I've seen much tighter corners on marathons. But Mara, what do you think the main protagonists in this field are thinking as they now see Trofimova building up this lead? And it's not a big lead yet, but it's certainly growing pretty quickly. Do you think they're thinking she will come back? There is no way an athlete of her caliber is going to run away from a World Championship field in these conditions.
Yeah, I mean, it depends how much, you know, they know their rivals. You want to have a reasonable idea of who you're up against in a race like this. But Trofimova, personal best of 2:24.38, season's best of 2:31.31. I mean, it's quite an aggressive start for her. It's still very early days. They've only done 1 kilometre and a bit. So you also have to think, right, I'm going to run my own race. You know, all of these athletes will have a plan. They'll have thought, how do I cope with this weather? You know, they might be in varying degrees of fitness because of the midnight start and the travel, the jet lag, adjusting to the heat and humidity. So a lot of them will have thought, right, I'm going to run this kind of race, and they'll let anyone quicker than that go ahead. I think that athlete in second place is the Kyrgyz athlete, Maria Korobitskaya. Can just make out her bib there.
She seems a little indecisive, doesn't she? Korobitskaya in second place. Does she go with Trofimova, or does she carve her own path there, sort of in no man's land between the main pack and the Russian who leads? But Mara, you've been in races in these sort of conditions on several occasions, running in British colours. What was your mental attitude going into the race? And in these early kilometres, was it very much just sit in the pack and conserve and not commit? Or did you want to try and cover breaks like this?
At this early stage, I think I would certainly be in the pack. When I ran the Osaka 2007 World Championships, we set off at what felt like a very pedestrian speed. It was 30 degrees at the start of that race and 31 to 2 at the finish. The start there was at 7 a.m. It was quite a sunny day. And after about, well, I decided I was going to attempt to get into the medals for that race, and at about 29k, I made my move and hit the front, but then I basically went a bit too soon, and I ended up in 9th in that race. Conversely, in the Beijing Olympics, we also set off very slowly. The eventual winner of that race left the pack at 15k. She had a reputation for racing too aggressively and slowing down in the final stages. So we all said, right, goodbye, we'll see you at 30k, 35k. And she just kept the gap and won the race. So marathons can be very tactical in that respect. Do you let early leaders go, or do you go with them? Chepngetich there leading the chasing group. 2:17.08 for Chepngetich, so third on the all-time list and leading time for 2019, but no championship experience from her.
Well, I'm thinking that this scene we're looking at right now, Mara, is very much what was expected. A big pack through the early kilometres. I mean, they've only got 9 minutes on the clock, just over 9 minutes now. They went through the first kilometre in 3:39, 2 kilometres in 7:16. So 3:39 for that first kilometre, then 3:37 for the second kilometre, with Trofimova here putting in that slight acceleration. As you said, the Kyrgyz athlete in second place just doesn't seem to be able to make up her mind. Either close up with Trofimova and work together, and that might be a more sound tactic, or drop back into the pack, but she's doing neither.
Yeah, they're both a bit in no man's land here. Of course, also, running in a pack can be much easier if it's windy. There's a little bit of a breeze on the Corniche this evening. And also, you can just tuck in behind other athletes, let them do the work with the pacemaking. Basically, just stay out of trouble. It's very early stages in this race.
But in these conditions, surely, where it is so hot and humid, isn't it a good thing to be out there at the front, getting the breeze over your body, rather than being perhaps in the middle of that pack, where you're not getting the full benefit of fresh air coming across your body?
Possibly. I mean, they're not so packed together that they wouldn't be getting any breeze. Of course, sweat evaporating is how you cool yourself down, and all these athletes will have thought really carefully about how they keep their body temperature low in conditions like this.
An acceleration there from one or two bodies in that pack you will have seen as they head towards this water station. Just 10.5 minutes on the clock now. Just 10.5 now, as they are clearly very keen to get across to those drinks. Those look like the personal drinks that they will have handed in last night and will have been refrigerated, or perhaps earlier on today, have been refrigerated through the day and then placed out on the circuit. You can see all the team supporters, the team staff, coaches handing the bottles to their charges there. That's going to be difficult. There's some chaos going on back there, I'm sure, because they're so tightly packed, that field. And in fact, the acceleration is put in by one or two athletes at the front of that pack to make sure they got their bottles at those tables has drawn them much closer to Trofimova.
Yeah, that's one of two personal drink stations on this course. Charlotte Purdue there, sole representative from Great Britain, just behind Edna Kipling. Looks like Edna Kipling has some tape on her right hamstring, so I just wonder if she's been nursing an injury there. But all the athletes going for the drinks there. And as you said, the tables were quite close together, so accidents can happen in that kind of scenario. Athletes swerving across in front of others, or I've even seen one athlete, she was pushed from behind and got pushed into the corner of her table and ended up having to retire from the race. So
Chepngetich then and Chepngetich with that acceleration for the first drinks table, having projected them up towards and past Trofimova, the Russian in the white vest. Working together now, perhaps, to make this pace a little bit more respectable. They've just gone through 3 kilometers in 10:58, so that was a 3:42. So their splits for the kilometers so far, 3:39, 3:37, and then a 3:42. It had slowed a little bit, and the Ruth Iaga from that Ethiopian trio, the 9th quickest athlete in history, recognizing the danger, perhaps, of these two Kenyans moving away, has closed the gap, crossed the gap between the pack and Chepngetich and Chepngetich, and Dereje is there as well. Chelimo, the defending champion in the red vest to the right there, looking pretty comfortable as you would expect in these early stages. Balete is there as well, another of that Bahrainian trio, or it is Eshete, excuse me. 3 times the Asian 10,000 meters champion. So an East African, 7 athletes from East Africa dominating at the moment.
the 4 Bahrain athletes are all East African born, 2 from Kenya and 2 from Ethiopia. In the blue uniform just behind that group is Joe from North Korea. A North Korean has won this race in the past, and they often feature in the sort of top 10, top 15, but apart from that one win, no other medals so far. So Joe really going with the East Africans here.
Well, it is beginning to stretch out pretty quickly. This 4th kilometre, I'm sure, will prove to be the quickest of the race so far. Chepngetich for Ethiopia in the yellow, the right-hand yellow vest of the 2 nearer the front. Possibly the tallest in this field. She has got a lovely relaxed stride. Chepngetich nearest the camera. Not necessarily running the shortest line, with this very gradual right-hand sweep around the this section of the northbound carriageway on the Corniche. Salpeter is there as well, so we've got a pack of, what, about 12 athletes. The gaps are not significant as yet.
So 3 of the North Korean team there in the lead group in the blue uniform. Back in Seville in 1999, Jong Song-ok of North Korea won the women's marathon in 2:26:59. Salpeter of Israel is an interesting athlete. She moved to Israel back in 2008 to become the nanny for the children of the Kenyan ambassador there, and met and married Dan Salpeter, an Israeli runner and now her coach. They had a son back in 2014. She now lives in Israel. She was granted citizenship back in March 2016, and went under 2:20 for the first time this year in the Prague Marathon, and she recently became the European 10K road record holder, breaking long-standing record held by Paula Radcliffe. Salpeter ran 30:04 on the 1st of September in Tilburg in the Netherlands. Also won the 10,000 meters the European 10,000 meters in Berlin last summer.
Oh yeah, she's got real pedigree, or building real pedigree, as Salpeter. I had the pleasure of meeting her there. She's in the white vest to right of picture. I had the pleasure of meeting her in March at a road race in Italy, and had a long chat with her, and she really is a delightful lady, very calm, deep thinker, and clearly on an upward projection at the moment. Her career going from strength to strength. She's had an astonishing 2019 as Salpeter. She set personal best at 5,000 meters, 10,000 meters, half marathon and marathon in 2019. And there she is, just a little zigzag around Echte, getting herself in a little spot of bother. Echte was sort of gliding across the road, getting in her way a little bit. Here's some of the back markers, negotiating a little S-bend up at the northern end of the course, where it narrows from that 3 lanes in each direction from the main carriageways that they're just coming off. It's a few hundred meters now, running up to the northern left-hand U-turn. There's only one lane wide.
We've been talking a lot about the hot weather, Tim, but actually this is a very fast course. It's very flat, very few corners. They've just got the 2 U-turns at the end of the bay, but they're quite wide turns, so they're not going to slow down the runners unduly. Very flat. The road surface is good. When we had a walk around earlier, really smooth road surface, no potholes, gravel or anything like that. So in theory, a fast course if it wasn't this warm.
I think I've just counted 20 athletes in this lead group. That's a pretty big pack to be moving away. Some hard chasing going on behind. It looks like 2 of the Americans maybe moving through. I think that was, but otherwise the athletes now beginning to come more and more spread out as this tempo continues. They've gone through 4 kilometers, by the way, in 14:39. That was a 3:37, which is the same split as the 2nd kilometer, but that is the equal quickest kilometer so far. And I wonder if we will see it gradually wind up. There's a long, long way to go. They've been running for 17.5 minutes. So they've got well over 2 hours of running to go. And we've been talking, haven't we, Mara, over the last couple of days about what sort of time we think this will be won in, and if they do go out slowly, how quick will the second half be. But I would be astonished if we see a time down towards 2:25 or any quicker than about 2:27 here today. But you just don't know.
It's so difficult to predict in conditions like this. I mean, as I was saying earlier, some of the hot championship races have been won in what are quite fast times, but I would be surprised if this goes under 2:35. When we get the 5K split, we'll be able to get a more accurate measure of what they're likely to finish in. We just saw Roberta Groner of the USA going past just there, 41 years old. She's a full-time nurse and mother of 3. She's the oldest athlete in this race, and she ran her PB recently to make her earn her place on the USA team.
5 kilometers there they've gone through. You may have seen that come up, 18:21. So they're averaging a pretty slow tempo at the moment. Here's the chasing group. Vainio there for Finland. No relation, by the way, to the shamed distance runner of the 1980s, Martti Vainio. We wish her well on what will be pretty tough for her. The weather just beginning to close in up in Scandinavia. And we're in between seasons, I suppose you could say, in Europe, most of Europe.
We just saw 2 of the Belarusian athletes go through there in the red and green uniforms. Tim, the Belarusian team won the European Team Championship, held as part of the European Championships in Berlin last year, along with Mazuronak, who won that championship and is racing here today. So the personal drinks, this is the general drink station they're passing now with water and sponges. And the personal drink stations that we saw earlier, that's where the athletes can provide their own drinks. And there are 2 stations of each type on this course. So within 7 kilometers, each lap is exactly 7 kilometers, they get 4 opportunities to have a drink and cool down. I think the amount of sponging and drinking we're seeing going on suggests that it is really, really hot out there.
Well, it's interesting to see Salpeter not only accelerate towards that drink station just now, Lona Chemtai Salpeter there, she's at 30 years of age, but also to see her pushing on with the pace at the front. She seems quite happy to lead. Now, living in Israel, I suppose she's pretty used to hot weather and humid weather as well. You know, I sometimes think, well, the Rift Valley athletes, the Kenyans and Ethiopians, and to a lesser extent, of course, the athletes from Uganda and so on, are not used to very humid weather, because at altitude the air tends to be very dry. It's quite different conditions. They don't get sweltering heat up there anyway, but yet they do cope pretty well with conditions usually in very warm conditions. Witness, for example, of course, Edna Kipling, whose 2 victories in 2011 and 2013 at the World Championships were in very warm conditions. But Salpeter may have a slight advantage over the majority of that roughly 20 strong pack in the fact that she's lived and trained in Israel, where things can get very, very hot indeed.
Yes, that's right. A lot of athletes will go overseas to train, either to altitude, or if it's too hot at home, they'll go somewhere cooler. A lot of the athletes, endurance athletes at these championships, have been training in St. Moritz for altitude, or Potchefstroom in South Africa again for altitude. Some of the race walkers I've spoken to have been in Barcelona, others in Cyprus. But I'm sure living in a hot country, as Salpeter does, will be very helpful. The same goes for the Japanese athletes. Of course, the Tokyo Olympics coming up next year. If you live or you've grown up in a very hot, humid country, I think you get used to how to cope with the hot weather a little better.
Well, this is Salpeter's 7th marathon start. She actually failed to finish the Olympic Games in Rio 3 years ago, but well, she won Florence last year in 2:24 and then really exploded onto the absolute top level world marathon running with that win in Prague back on the 5th of May, 2:19:46. She set national records for not only personal bests but national records for Israel at so many distances through 2019. She has been on fire, and I suppose if you were to look at her form on the track as well, she does have a slight advantage over many in this field who are out-and-out road racers. And I always think it's nice when I've seen an athlete go through the gears of a career, who've paid their due at lower distances, for example, on the track, and have got good personal bests at 5,000 and 10,000. 6 kilometers there, 21:58.
Based on their split at 5K, Tim, which was 18:21, that gives them if they kept that speed going for the whole way, they would be finishing in around 2:34, which actually is a pretty good speed for these conditions.
Well, good crowds along the Corniche this evening. That is quite a surprise, I have to say, because local time it's nearly midnight here in Doha. That said, glancing out of my hotel room window on the last couple of nights, the roads are so busy through midnight and after. You sometimes wonder what hours the people keep here in Doha. They certainly don't live the way we live in Europe, and that is to get to bed well before midnight with a long day to come. Here, I suppose they take advantage of the cooler night air, and then perhaps, obviously, siesta style almost, have some low points during the day. Salpeter really beginning to turn it on now. She's just cranked it up another notch, hasn't she? The European 10,000 champion from last year in Berlin, a 2:19 performer just in the last few months, with the world #1 against the clock, Chepngetich, in her slipstream. There is a race developing here far more early than I expected, Mara.
Absolutely. I didn't think it would be this spread out anywhere near this early. But, I mean, 2:34 is a really pretty good time for these conditions, but it is still very early days. People say that halfway in a marathon is 20 miles. The famous Japanese marathon runner Toshihiko Seko used to say the first 20 miles is the warm-up and then you start racing. So still very, very early days. The group on the left of your screen there, you can see a blue dotted line on the road that they're following. Yes, that's it. I was thinking there are several lines there, but I think they are following the main line. So that blue line is the shortest course to run. So anyone deviating from that line is going to be running more than 42.195 kilometers. So the most efficient way to run is to follow that blue line.
Well, Chepngetich seems to almost been sparked into aggression here by Salpeter's little surge. She's dragging Chepngetich with her. Chelimo, the reigning champion, there in third place in the all-red colours of Bahrain. Be fascinating to see how Chelimo goes on here, because while she had a great 2018 after her London victory of the previous year, the championship, of course, 2 years ago in London, she hasn't had a good 2019. She really hasn't, and I wasn't expecting a big run from here tonight. There's Edna Kipling at the drink station with the blue strapping to her right thigh at her left of picture. They go through 7 kilometers in 25:33. So the last, the 6th kilometer was a 3:37. The 7th kilometer, just waiting for that split to be confirmed.
They're actually running very, very steady splits, very similar splits. Rose Chelimo is the Asian Games champion. That competition was held in Jakarta in Indonesia last summer in very hot, sweltering conditions. And she won that race in about 2:34. So obviously good at racing in hot weather.
A lot of athletes are sweating up profusely, of course. They're squeezing sponges over their heads and pouring water over their shoulders and their thighs to try and keep cool. And you don't know how much of it is sweat and how much of it is water that they have very willingly poured over themselves. But this is hard work, there's no doubt about that. We were expecting a considerable number of dropouts this evening, but at the moment, everybody working hard. There's only 26, nearly 27 minutes on the clock. You can see bottom right of your screen with that clock. But there is plenty of racing to come, and I am surprised how quickly this has become broken down to a small lead group, Mara, and the racing up front is pretty fierce.
Yeah, it's pretty spread out already. I mean, they're going at a steady pace. 2:34 is pretty pedestrian for these athletes who can run 2:18, 2:19. But you can see they're all really sweating profusely and getting drinks and water to cool themselves down at any opportunity. So let's just see if they can keep this going.
That 7th kilometre, by the way, they went through 7 kilometres in 25:33, was a 3:35, the quickest of the race. Now, I know it's not much of a difference when you look at 3:35 to 3:37, but a couple of seconds does matter. It's an indication of the general direction of the shape of the race, the way it's unfolding. And of course we can make comparisons in the kilometre splits here with real trust, because it's so flat. There's no lumps and bumps, there's no severe twists and turns. The kilometre splits here are should be incredibly consistent, or enable consistency. Here's a chasing group, and it includes the 2-time champion Edna Kipling there to the left of picture. Yeah, I still think it's too early, Mara, to make predictions that the winner is going to come from that leading 10 or 15, because there are so many acts yet to unfold in this race. They've probably got over 2 hours of running to come, and we're going to see plenty of athletes from that lead pack wilt and drop back, and possibly 1 or 2 drop out. So there's a lot to come yet.
It's very early days. They haven't even reached 10K yet, and in these kind of conditions, some of them may survive 2:34, but I think some in that group will start to suffer. If you consider they can get drinks pretty often, but there is a limit to how much fluid your body can digest per hour. So even if you drink loads and loads, it doesn't necessarily help you in terms of reducing dehydration. So if they're sweating profusely and aren't able to replenish that lost fluid, then we could see some severe dehydration in the latter stages. The heat and humidity has been a big topic in the build-up to these championships, and very careful consideration was made by the organisers with the medical staff about whether to postpone this race. They've been carefully monitoring the weather all week and had a particular threshold which they decided would be safe for the athletes to run, and a decision was taken earlier today to go ahead with the women's marathon. So despite the concerns, the organisers have considered very carefully the conditions. They've laid on extra medical staff. So let's hope that we don't see. So Kesho there, I think.
8-kilometre split there, 29.05, and that suggests to me perhaps a slight slowing. In fact, it's again around just outside 3:30, that 8-kilometre split. It's a 3:32, in fact. That is the quickest split of the race. I thought it looked like they'd slowed down, an optical illusion or just a failing in my judgment. But they are beginning to move away now. And this pack, remember, just a few minutes ago was 20 strong. We're down to 7. Salpeter is there on the far side for Israel. The Kenyans very much to the fore, so are the Bahrainis. And they're just beginning to close up, though, another quintet behind. And that, in fact, is Edna Kipling to the extreme left of that group of what, some 12 or so that you can see now. This lead group has grown, has been a joining together, a coming together. And significantly, Edna Kipling, who at the age of 37 was a silver medalist in London 2 years ago, to go with her golds of 2011 and 2013. She is just tucked in the back there.
This is classic Edna Kipling racing. She just stays out of trouble, doesn't do anything flashy, just ticks off the early kilometres, saving as much energy as possible, and then in the final stages she'll put her foot down. Edna Kipling is already the oldest medalist ever in the marathon. She was 37 in 2017, as you said, Tim. And if she medals or wins today, she will be the oldest ever in the marathon. She currently holds the record medal haul in this women's World Championship marathon with Catherine Endereba. They each have 2 golds and 1 silver apiece. So if Edna wins a medal today, she will be the best World Championship marathon runner ever. The most medals won by any one single man is 2, so Catherine and Edna already have a bigger medal haul.
Well, all of them making use of the sponges there. I think there's hardly a sponge station or a drink station that they pass now at which they don't all congregate and target themselves to get liquids on board, either into their bodies or over their bodies. Chepngetich there, still looking very calm. I have to say, the calmness and the way they carry themselves at the moment is fabulous. Look at Aga there to the right of picture with the headband. Looks very, very calm indeed. You wouldn't think she'd been running for 32.5 minutes in around 32 degrees centigrade heat. The breeze, I think, has settled a little bit. Doesn't seem to be a lot of movement from those palm trees alongside the Corniche.
A few moments ago, we caught sight of Chepngetich stopping to, it looked like, tie up her shoelaces. She'd stopped and was crouching down, but she's well back into that leading pack now, so it doesn't seem to have bothered her at all there.
Well, Mara, if you were tucked in towards the back of this group, what would be your mental position right now? Would you think, right, let's just get this middle section of the race clicked by? You know, they're coming up towards 9 kilometers. They've got the early miles out of the way. Would you just think, right, try and shut down mentally, relax, tuck in behind this group, cover anything that happens that looks like a really serious surge, but actually it's all about retaining your strength, isn't it?
Yes, in these early stages in the race, you really don't want to expend more energy than is necessary, especially in hot conditions like this. You just want to tick over those early miles, save your energy, stay out of trouble, don't do anything silly, make sure you get your drinks, you know, make sure you don't fall over, don't go off too hard. And then as the race gets into, you know, past halfway, approaching 20 miles, then you can think about what have you got left in the tank, how are you going to make a move, aim for a medal or top 8 or whatever it might be.
Well, they've gone through 9 kilometers in 32:59. That came up just now. That was my maths is letting me down. That was a much slower kilometer. That was a 3:54 there. I think possibly because they'd grabbed those sponges and were all concentrating on cooling down. Yeah, 3:53 in fact has come up as the official split. That is by far the slowest kilometer so far. So significantly much slower, Mara.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering what happened.
Yeah, I'm surprised they've slowed that much. I mean, it may be Salpeter was pushing the pace along earlier, and maybe she's decided she wants somebody else to take it on, but they're not showing willing. Perhaps the heat is starting to get to them. we just don't know. Let's wait and see.
Well, there's 12 athletes in this lead group now, and you can see behind quite a few athletes just beginning to close up. So I think that was a genuine split, 3:53. It was around 20 seconds slower than the previous couple of kilometers. And that means that the athletes behind, who have probably maintained a more consistent tempo, have gained a lot, probably 50, 60, 70 yards on this lead group. If they slow down much more, then we're going to have a 20 or 25 strong pack once again. This is, I wouldn't call it a seesawing of tempo at the moment. It'll be very interesting to see if Salpeter here regathers her resources and pushes on again. And that, of course, Mara, is always a very difficult tactic to cover, isn't it? When you get surges in a race, whether it's a long race on the track at 10,000 meters or in a road race, what do? Do you just stay calm and let them enjoy their surges and burn themselves up, or do you try and cover those surges because they might not come back?
Yeah, I mean, the most efficient way to run from A to B, whatever the distance, is even pace. Because as soon as you diverge from even pace, you're burning off energy unnecessarily when you're going faster than even pace. So any kind of surges, it is going to be less efficient. So approaching the personal drinks table again. So you can see the coaches there. Some of them are handing the drinks out, some leaving the drinks on the table for the athletes to catch themselves. The athletes will, where there are teams with several athletes competing, they will have decided in advance where on the table they're going to put their drinks if they're catching them themselves, to avoid a lot of confusion about whose drinks they're catching.
There is Ruth Aga, very much amongst the favourites, and I have to say, looking as cool and calm and collected as anybody in this race. Second in the Manchester 10K, just 2 or 3 months back in the UK. Won the Tokyo Marathon earlier on this year in that fabulous 2:20:40 in very cold, wet conditions in Tokyo too, very early on in the year. So she comes to this one fresh. I suppose there's an advantage, Mara, to doing a marathon in February or March as opposed to doing one in the April-May spring marathon season.
Definitely, yes. I mean, April to a typical summer timing marathon is a very short window, but of course these championships are coming a bit later. We're late September, we're almost into the autumn marathon season. I mean, the Berlin Marathon is happening in 2 days' time, Chicago also very soon. So athletes who've done a spring marathon will have had a reasonable break. Ruth Aga she's currently second in the World Marathon Majors rankings. The World Marathon Majors is a league of top marathons, including London, Tokyo, Chicago, and the World Championships.
Well, Chepngetich here has put in a substantial surge, and Ruth Aga is covering it. So is the reigning champion, Chelimo. I think that's Chepngetich back in 4th place, but this is a very, very determined push from the world #1 this year against the clock. They've gone through 10 kilometers, remember, in 36:44. It's almost as though that lit the touch paper of the world #1, because Chepngetich here is striding on, and there's a distinct increase in her stride length and her cadence as well. And Aga slots into her slipstream. Here is Salpeter, who is at the moment beginning to drop back, but I think she had a problem just now at that last drink station. She certainly doesn't look too comfortable. There she is in the white vest up against the railings. Oh my goodness, look at that, stops to grab the drink. And she grabbed a towel, tried to grab simultaneously, I think, that towel to wipe herself down along with the drink bottle, and it all went very wrong. And I don't know whether or not Chepngetich was aware, but here is Salpeter just trying to compose herself once again. She'll be annoyed with herself for that, because she's actually quite experienced, and that was unnecessary.
Yeah, although, I mean, the drink stations is often where accidents happen, if they happen. You see people being shoved, being pushed, athletes surging across in front of others. So, yeah, I hope she'll recover from that. Chepngetich now putting her foot down. With looking at their 10K split, Tim, that puts them on a goal time of around 2:35. So still about the same pace they started off at, but I think Chepngetich now is picking up the pace a bit.
I'm just wondering whether or not there's a degree of naivety here creeping in from Chepngetich. I know she's strong, I know she's the world #1, indeed the 3rd fastest in history. But this is very, very early to be putting in a surge like this as they approach the northern end of the course. They're heading along the Corniche with the sea to their right. She is being very aggressive here, trying to break away from her compatriot Chepngetich in 2nd place. The reigning champion Chelimo, the former Kenyan, running in the colours of Bahrain in 3rd place. There's their 11-kilometre split, 39.57. And that certainly does suggest a much increased tempo. They've gone through that 11K mark with a split, let me just check, of what, 3:13?
That's what our monitors are saying. That's very, very fast.
That's astonishing. The previous kilometre was 3:45. And I can understand it because not only has she broken those 2 or 3 who were with her, but this group of 4, for the first half of that kilometre, eased a long way away from Salpeter and 2 or 3 of the others behind. So this from Chepngetich may be a very, very decisive move. She's blasted away from them. You rightly pointed out that they have only just gone through 11 kilometres. I mean, they've got 42 kilometres in total to run. So they've not done much more than a quarter of the race distance. But Chepngetich tidying things up here astonishingly.
I'm not quite sure what she's doing now. A 3:13 split is something you would put in at 40K or 38K. I mean, she's obviously trying to get a gap and then keep it. But in these kind of conditions, that it does seem very aggressive racing from Chepngetich. She came out of nowhere, did 2:22 on her debut.
Here is some of that chasing pack. Maturonak there with the ponytail goes through. The European champion Ri is there for career as well. And Rocha also goes through for Portugal, I think. And you can see Salpeter there leading that group, but she's a long way back now from Chepngetich, and this could be a very, very decisive gap that the world #1 is building. 3:13, Mara. I mean, you know, we've had splits of 3:53 a couple of kilometres back.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I'm even wondering if there's an error, but I don't think there is. So Chepngetich, she's obviously trying to get a huge gap, but I think she may have overcooked it a bit. Well, let's see. She's top of the world rankings. She's the fastest this year. She 2:22 on her debut. She got that down to 2:18, now 2:17.08.
That line of towers, the lighting towers, been constructed along the Corniche specifically for these marathon runners who started, what, 42.5 minutes ago. With the dignitaries looking on, a major protagonist introduced to the crowd, a growing crowd, a really impressive crowd too, as they got underway at 1 minute to midnight here in very warm conditions. I expected the race to retain a big pack for many kilometers, but it wasn't to be. That's the way it looks in the opening couple of 100 meters. But boy, oh boy, did they defy expectation. Many athletes here clearly acclimatized really well. The East Africans, of course, were expected to dominate, and that is indeed the way it's unfolding. But the nature of the race over the last half hour has really dumbfounded me, because this is the effect it's had on some fabulously quick names. Ruth Iaga, the defending champion, Rose Chelimo. Looks like she's going to struggle to make a successful defense tonight. There is Edna Kipling. Don't write her off. Johannes, the Commonwealth champion for Namibia, alongside Kipling. She could do a lot worse than stay alongside the very experienced Edna Kipling. Makonnen there of Bahrain. She also very experienced. But she looks to be struggling, and Salpeter doesn't look comfortable. Is that a smile and a little punch of the air there?
Makonnen, we just saw, Ethiopian-born Bahrain athlete, only 22 years old. She won the Seoul Marathon earlier this year, PB of 2:23.44. We earlier saw Johannes of Namibia passing. She's one of the older athletes in this group, 39 years old. She won the Nagoya Marathon in March this year in a national record, 2:22.25. Half marathon PB of 1:10.30, which was also a national record from Cape Town in April 19.
Well, we're hearing that one athlete has already succumbed to the conditions, as actually in quite a bad way. The leaders have gone through 12 kilometers. There she is, Ruth Chepngetich, the 25-year-old Kenyan, celebrated her 25th birthday a couple of months back. The world #1, went through 12K in 43.26, Just turning to our charts to check what sort of finishing time that might put them on. Certainly it will be coming down because Chepngetich is tearing away from this field, and this last kilometre split, 12-kilometre split, was at 3:28 after a 3:13. Much quicker than the times that were coming up for each kilometre through the first 10K. Still looks very composed.
Chepngetich, top of the world rankings currently. Incredible run she had in Dubai in January, went straight up to third all time with her 2:17.08, managed by Federica Rosa and trains in Kenya. There's Bruce of the USA. Many of these athletes have had to, of course these athletes have had to qualify. The qualification time set by the IAAF was 2:37. Some countries will have set tougher standards. And several of these athletes have set national records this year en route to qualifying for this race. Hanslik of Cyprus set a national record of 2:34. Weldu of Eritrea 2:28, national record. We earlier saw the athlete from Palestine in the turquoise uniform, 2:39. She set a national record in Hanover earlier this year.
Here is Chepngetich trying to build a lead, but she's going to have to work very hard because there's some hard chasing going on behind. It looks like Chepkesho, her compatriot, who is trying to cling onto her coattails, and that psychological elastic band between these two hasn't yet been stretched to a snapping point. Yeah.
Chepngetich looks very comfortable.
Doesn't she just? Has a half marathon personal best of 65:30. Anything under 67 minutes, I suppose, puts you in the top 10 or 15 of the year, and it has been a special year for half marathon running. Of course, the men's half marathon was broken just 10 days ago. Was it last Sunday? No, the Sunday before, I think, by Camwell.
Yep, Copenhagen half marathon.
58:12, and of course, when there's been talk about when they get under 58 minutes for the half marathon, then the sub 2-hour marathon becomes more conceivable. And they're knocking on the door of sub 58 minutes, the men. For ladies, well, under 70 minutes in world class, under 66 minutes is you're in the supreme levels. Chepngetich very much in that category. Only Paula Radcliffe and Mary Kaitani have run fast. Paula Radcliffe, the quickest under any conditions for the women's marathon, with that astonishing 2:15 clocking in 2003. Mary Kaitani a couple of years ago in London running 2:17.01, which is the world record for a women-only race. And this being a women-only race, it's the world record, of course, that came up at the beginning of our coverage.
The
13K, sorry, 46:49. I want to make sure we reference these kilometre splits, Mara, because they are so important in a race that has broken the rules, if you like, of hot weather marathons. They have gone off so hard so early. I mean, 13 kilometres, they haven't yet covered a third of the overall distance, and I suspect there's many more acts yet to unfold that could see significant changes in these top 6 or 8 runners.
We were talking about the drinks earlier, Tim. The athletes have drinks every 3.5K or so because it's twice on each lap. Typically in a race like this, they would only get their personal drinks at every 5K, at 5K intervals. So drinks being laid on more frequently, it's one of the measures that they've taken to cope with the hot weather. And they can have all manner of things. It's entirely up to them what they have in their drinks. Typically they would have carbohydrate sports drinks. In hot conditions, they might have added a bit of salt in there. Flat cola drinks is another favourite because of the sugar and the caffeine. Some of them may be just sticking with water. Of course, sports drinks are quite a new thing in marathon running. Back in the 70s and 80s, everybody ran world-class times with just a few swigs of water, if that. But now a lot of research goes into carbohydrates and what type of carbohydrate is the best.
Well, you can hear the pitter-patter of the footfall of Ruth Chepngetich. There's a distinct rhythm to that, and it's an accelerated rhythm from that we saw over the first few kilometres. And I suspect when they get to 15 kilometres, we'll see a split that will give us a much quicker likely finishing time than was the case at 5 kilometers and 10 kilometers. 5K in 18:21, 10 kilometers in 36:44 projected her towards a likely finishing time of 2:35. But her last 3 kilometers have changed the whole complexion of the race. 3:13 for the 11th kilometer, 3:28 for the 12th kilometer, 3:32 for kilometer 13, and that was after in the early stages lots of clockings in the 3:40s and even a 3:53 for the 9th kilometer.
What I don't understand is how, having thrown in a 3:13, she now looks so comfortable and easy. I mean, 3:13 is really going some, and it really hasn't taken anything at all out of her. So I think Chepngetich has a lot left in the tank.
Well, we are hearing that one of the major names in the race has dropped out with an ankle injury, reportedly. Rosa Dereje of Ethiopia, the 22-year-old who is a 2:19 performer last year, has apparently dropped out. She was third at the London Marathon back in April in 2 hours 20. But Dereje, who was expected certainly to be a top 10 placer, if not challenging for a medal, has gone. And well before halfway. That's a huge shock and a great shame for the Ethiopian. There's the 14K splits, 50-23. She's got just an 8-second lead.
So the athletes
as
go past
Chepngetich. She's had to work very hard for that too. Here is Salpeter, I think, grabbing a hat. She goes through that drink station. She's a long way down now, Salpeter. 51.16. She's almost a minute down on Chepngetich, and this is a real surprise. I expected a stronger challenge from the Israeli.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that early pace was, well, I mean, it wasn't that fast. I'm surprised that maybe she's just suffering with dehydration. In these kind of conditions, you just can't predict what's going to happen. You know, they might set off feeling reasonably comfortable, but if they're sweating profusely and not getting enough fluid on board, they're going to dehydrate quickly. Body type makes a massive difference in a situation like this. Basically, the smaller and lighter you are, the easier it is to dissipate heat that you generate from running, and the bigger you are, the more difficult it is. So the really tiny waif-like athletes have an advantage in conditions like this.
Dare I say that's possibly why you run well in such warm weather.
Oh, I'm on the larger end of marathon runners. When I was competing, I used to get my race weight down to 49 or 50 kilos. I'm about 5'3". But a lot of the African athletes and a lot of the Japanese athletes who I was often competing against, some of them weighed 40, 45 kilos. Noguchi Mizuki, the Athens Olympic champion from 2004, weighs 40 kilos. So if you imagine me at 50 kilos up against somebody who weighs 40 kilos in hot conditions, I'm going to have to work an awful lot harder.
Well, the athletes are beginning to find the strain too much here. Just hearing that one of the Ukrainians has dropped out, as we see Chepngetich here being caught by Johannes and Jetkesho and Kipling. Now, is this Chepngetich going through a bad patch or purposely just slowing down and taking a breather? That's bizarre, because she had a 6 or 8 second lead just a couple of minutes ago, and she's allowed them to close right up on her. But just a couple of minutes ago, the Ukrainian Alexandra Shafar, the 31-year-old, formerly of Belarus, stepped off the road. She's a 2:26 performer, although that was a few years ago. And she has had enough on this occasion. Her husband Vitaly is provisionally suspended after an alleged doping violation back in January 2017. But that's a sad sight for the Ukrainian Alexandra Shafar.
And Sofim over there, the early leader, joined by some of these runners somewhat down the field.
And they've just gone through 15 kilometers. We'll bring that split view exactly as quickly as we can. It's due to come up on our computer system here very shortly. But Chepngetich, quite bizarre, because she ran so determinedly there for 3 or 4 kilometers to try and break that field, then maybe thought better of it. Perhaps she changed her mind, Mara, I don't know, because she's eased back and allowed this quartet to close up on her. And Edna Kipling to the right there with that long loping stride of her. She's so tall, so big compared with many of her competitors, looking very comfortable indeed. And I suspect if we were to look at her splits, she will have run a more steady tempo to regain contact with Chepngetich.
Yeah, I think that the group that caught Chepngetich would have been running more even pace, and Chepngetich's bizarre split of 3:13 from a 3:50 odd something. Her pace has just been really up and down, but she seems to be quite comfortable now despite this group having caught her. So Chepngetich a bit of a difficult one to read at the moment.
Well, we're talking about one or two casualties. We've seen Dereje, one of the favourites, drop out, the Ethiopian. We've seen Shafar of Ukraine drop out. And now I'm just hearing that Dossena of Italy, Sarah Dossena of Italy, has stepped off the road, clearly struggling. And you normally expect the Italians to cope really well in these hot conditions, but she's sweating up profusely there and actually having to get assistance to get away from the road. And that is a huge surprise, because Stranio, for example, in Moscow 2013 ran so fabulously well in the colours of Italy to take the silver medal. And you think, well, the Italians, it's sweltering hot in much of Italy through the summer, they will be well acclimatised.
Yeah, Sarah Dosena's been in great shape. She's been running PBs this year. She ran 2:24 dead early this year, so really strong athlete, and she was in good form. And it's still early days in the race, only 15 kilometres into the race.
There's that indicator on the left of this 5-woman pack at the front. Chepngetich, Kiplagat, Kesho, 3 Kenyans there. Johannes and Chelimo, the reigning champion, defending her title. There's Salpeter and Mokonin in 2nd place, but look, 55 seconds back. That's a big gap. And then Rocha of Portugal, Maturonak, the Belarus athlete, European champion, and Ree is also there for Korea, and Joe as well for Korea on her own.
This race is important for qualification for the Olympics next year in Tokyo. A top 10 finish in this race is considered a qualification for these athletes, so that would be one way for them to qualify. Otherwise, the standard set by the IAAF is 2:29:30, and other individual countries may set tougher standards. So this year, much tougher standard than it has been in previous years, 2:29:30. So some of these athletes, I think, will maybe thinking that a top 10 finish here is an easier way to qualify for the Olympics next year. The qualification period already underway from much earlier this year, and it runs into, I believe it's May next year, so a bit of time for these athletes still to qualify.
Well, we're getting news of another casualty. Unfortunately, Rwanda's Clementine Mukandanga is also stepping off the raceway, I should say. As we see the Americans going through there, I think, just taking it nice and steadily. And this was a race that we all knew in the build-up over the last few days, and particularly as opinions have become more sharpened in the last few hours, was going to be a real test of judgment. Now, many athletes will have gone out too hard for the first few kilometres and pay the price. Others who have sat way back in the early kilometres will begin to work their way through. Here is Rocha of Portugal. You would expect her to feel pretty comfortable in these conditions, comparatively speaking. Maturonak giving a good account of herself there as well, the European champion. And Dari back in 3rd place for Korea. This is a chasing group, remember.
Rocha looking pretty comfortable there. And Maturonak, the European champion from last year, she ran an extraordinary second half in London back in 2016, very strong second half, so we may see her feature in the latter stages of the race. But Rocha, I must say, looking very comfortable compared to some of the other athletes.
I mean, it really helps, doesn't it, Mara, when you get into the middle of a race like this and you're beginning to have to work hard, as we see Rocha's car there. She is a classy athlete, 2:24 performer. If you can work in pairs or trios and share the burden of keeping a healthy pace, you can start to really pick up the pace and pick up people who are dropping off packs ahead of you.
That's right. It's always easier to run with somebody. I mean, unless they're doing something silly like surges, but yeah, it's always easier to run with somebody. Share the pace, share the, bracing from the wind if there's any wind. It's a lonely journey. 26 miles, 42 kilometers is a long old way if you're running on your own. So better if you can be in a small group. But these 5 African athletes looking pretty comfortable.
Well, they're averaging 3:37 per kilometre. The last couple of kilometres actually at the front have been 3:38, and then for the 16th kilometre 3:37. So they're settling down perhaps to a more reliable tempo. Although as I say that, Chepngetich here on the near side, nearest the camera, just keeping clear of the group and looking like she's beginning to build up to another surge. Doesn't seem too keen to stick with the others, whereas Kipling and Johannes almost look like they're tied together, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, 3:37, 3:38, that's what they did in the early few kilometres before we saw that 3:13 from Chepngetich. So, I mean, this looks pretty comfortable. You know, they don't look like they're struggling. I think this is a good pace for these conditions.
I am fascinated by Johannes because she hasn't exactly come from nowhere, but at the age of, what, 39, she has had an astonishing couple of years. The Commonwealth Games champion last year, and that's after, let's remember, finishing 40th in the Olympic Games in Beijing in 2008, 11th in London 2012. That was a great run, but 56th in Rio 2016. And yet she's blossomed over this last couple of years to become Commonwealth champion and smash her personal best for that national record for Namibia of 2:22.
Yeah, she took a big chunk off her best time when she won Nagoya. I mean, the marathon, because you can only race the marathon 2 or 3 times a year, it does take a few years sometimes to get the hang of it, you know, really crack it. So sometimes you do see athletes, they start off okay, they have a few years where they don't quite get it right, and then as they get older, they really nail it. And of course, through those years, they've been doing marathon-specific hard training, which is all miles in the bank and small improvements year on year. We mentioned...
Oh, my word.
Ruth Aga is out of the race.
It's a bad day for the Ethiopians. Goodness me. Well, Ruti Aga and Rosa Dereje, 2 out of the 3 Ethiopians in this World Championship marathon race, have dropped out well before halfway. That is a huge shock. And when we last saw Ruti Aga, and it was a little while ago, she looked very comfortable to me. She is a 2:18 athlete at her absolute best. She won Tokyo earlier on this year. She paced Osaka as well back in 2016. So she's gone through the gears and has developed as a performer. And at the age of 25, must have come here with high hopes. But I wonder whether or not, as we see this third group now with Matsuronak and Rocha and Ree, I wonder whether or not, Mara, it's one of those situations where you get to, you know, 20 kilometers in a race or something like that, and you're feeling really bad. You're not having a great day at the office. You're way down the field. You know you've got no chance of a medal. And you say to yourself, do you know what? I'll throw the towel in now. I'll keep my powder dry to fight another day. Why battle on through a dreary, dreadful performance compared with what I'm capable of?
Yeah, some athletes might be thinking that. It depends, you know, how much you commit to it on the start line. This is because these kind of races see a lot of dropouts. It's the perfect race for second or third tier athletes to do well. And this is why I think these kind of championship races where they're hot, they're real levelers, and then they're, in a way, much more exciting than the big city races we see, which are won in very fast times, because a lot of the big guns will have a bad day, and athletes like Rocha of Portugal or Great Britain's Charlotte Purdue, they're the sort of athletes who would struggle to win a big city race, but they could get into the medals here. We've seen this before in World Championship marathon. So last time in London 2 years ago, Amy Cragg of the USA won the bronze medal. And then in Moscow in 2013, Edna Kipling won that race, but in second was the Italian Straneo, and third was Fukushi Kayoko of Japan.
Well, this leading quintet have slowed down a little bit. 3:40, that's 17th kilometre, 61:18. But Chebet of Uganda has dropped out of the race as well, and there are yet more casualties.
We're just confirming the name.
Matanga
of Tanzania, that was.
Heard dropped out a little while ago, so it's proving very, very difficult. And you know, we talked just, didn't we, Mara, over the last couple of days about how you can prepare and acclimatise for conditions like these, but it's very easy to overcook it, to over-prepare. And if you work too hard for several weeks in very hot, sweaty conditions, you can drain yourself and it actually becomes a negative. The balance is very fine.
Yeah, so heat acclimatization is absolutely essential for a race like this. When I ran Osaka in 2007, I did 2 weeks and I decided that was enough. It was long enough to get the adaptation, but it wasn't too long to risk getting fatigued and basically run down by the hot weather. And of course the athletes have started at midnight as well. Midnight to 2:30 a.m. is not a time when you normally would be running. So, and you can't just turn up at a race at midnight and expect to be at your best. So some of these athletes may have been sleeping more during the day and up more at night and training at night to get used to this race, which is exactly what they should be doing. But then the danger is that you end up a bit sleep depleted. You know, in the athlete hotels when they've been traveling, everybody else is up and about during the day, so it may have been difficult to sleep, and that may be why we've seen so many dropouts so far.
Well, I mentioned the Ugandan Chepngetich Chebet. She's a 2:32 performer. She meeting her demise just a few minutes ago, and there's a sad sight. Chebet being loaded onto one of the mini ambulances along the circuit there, and of course fluids and all other appropriate medical attention will be given to her. We have heard that the medical facilities and numbers of staff on the course have been dramatically upgraded for what you would normally expect at a World Championship marathon, and rightly so, and it's beginning to look like they're going to be needed. That is a very sad sight for a good athlete, Chebet. There is Sirona, the European champion, who is still looking strong. This is sort of the way she ran in Berlin. She has this metronomic style, or in fact, excuse me, that's her
teammate, Ivanova. The Belarusian team, as we were saying earlier in the European Championships, won the team gold medal. So, and Ivanova was a member of that team. I think she came 4th in that European Championship. Belarus fielding a very strong team.
Is it me, or she almost looked like a twin? She had a black ponytail, exactly the same sort of cut dark hair, and goodness me. Salpeta, well, who knows? She's still running strongly. Moronin there of Bahrain in her wake, but Salpeta may yet come through. I mean, they're nowhere near halfway yet. They've gone through 18 kilometers in 65:04. That was a 3:46. So the last 4 kilometers have been 3:38, 3:37, 3:40, and then a 3:46. That is the slowest kilometer since the 9th kilometer. So they are taking perhaps a little mid-race breather, that lead pack.
Chacha there we just saw on our screens. That was Rosa Chacha of Ecuador, and just behind her was Cuomo Chiren of China. And here is the Palestine athlete Al Sayed that we mentioned earlier. So she set a national record qualifying for this race earlier this year in Hanover, 2:39. There's Jo, one of the North Korean athletes, and behind her 2 of the American athletes, Grona, the oldest in the field, 41 years old, and Kari Dimov, her teammate. Dimov with a personal best of 2:31.12.
Well, here is that leading quartet. 3 Kenyans there. They're looking very strong, the Kenyans. Chepngetich at the front. Hasn't yet put in another surge, but she's rather determinedly staying to the fore. One athlete I'm surprised at is Chelimo there to the right of picture. Doesn't she look cool, calm and collected? The defending champion, former Kenyan in the colours of Bahrain, who is coming off what has been, by her standards, a relatively poor racing year, but has she got it right for this one? The reigning Asian Games champion, of course, in the marathon, took the Asian Games title last year. And she sharpened up with a 10K in Tilburg in the Netherlands. I saw her racing in May at a half marathon, and a 10K rather, in India, in Bangalore. So she has kept the racing going. Maybe just a lot of hard training has dampened her racing form. It's coming to the 3:34 now, and she's enjoying the benefit now, but she's looking good as they approach halfway. 69 minutes on the clock. And Salpeter here still looks composed to me. She's just got to keep a calm head here, I guess, Mara, because at the moment it doesn't look like she's got a shot at a medal, but she has got to keep telling herself they will come back, they will come back. She's in 6th place.
Yeah, she's a bit out on her own there, as is Makonnen, the Ethiopian-born Bahrain runner. She looks like she's really suffering, doesn't she? So the field really spread out now. And in this kind of situation, if athletes at the front start to suffer, these athletes in the second, third groups are going to catch up those faltering leaders. And I think the finishing order may well change dramatically towards the end of this race.
Do you think it's a good thing that Salpeter and Matsuronak, the European champion, and Moronin and Rocha here from Portugal, are running alone, or would they be better off in a group? Because if you're running alone, you listen to your own body a little bit more, you run your own tempo, you make your own decisions, or maybe even subconscious decisions. If you're in a pack, you can get led into a tempo or a pace at times that may be too slow or too fast for the way your body would want to be. So you can respond more naturally to the way you feel if you are on your own.
Yeah, there is that danger. I mean, if you're in a group and you get swept along to a pace which you're just not in shape for, that is a danger. But equally, you can get swept along to a slightly faster pace than you might be able to do on your own, but which is still possible. So running in a group actually is a good way to raise your game, lift your performance, get the very best out of yourself.
I sense that leading 5 have slowed a little bit. I think they're taking a bit of a breather here. They're approaching 20 kilometers. They went through 19 kilometers in 68.48. That was a 3:44 split. You can see Salpeter, well, she's 52 seconds back. Now that has stayed fairly steady for the last 15 or 20 minutes. Mokonin 16 seconds back from Salpeter, 13 seconds back to the European champion Matsuronak, who, let's remember, is just in 8th place. Her race is far from over. Rocha having a great run for the Portuguese in 9th place, a further 17 seconds back. So while the gap between this leading 5 and Salpeter in 6th place looks pretty sizable, if they keep up this slow tempo for another kilometre or two, Salpeter and the others could start closing up on them.
Yes, or if any of this group start to struggle and really slow down, Matsuronak and Rocha and Salpeter will be well placed to catch them up. So I think we could, I'm pretty certain we're going to see some changes in the finishing order before we reach the finish.
Well, we knew this was a strong field. The reigning world champion and the reigning Commonwealth champion in Chelimo and Johannes respectively are in this group. You have to remember that Edna Kipling got second to right as we see that group just behind Chepngetich is a twice world champion. The European champion, of course, is still in there battling away, Matsuronak. And the Asian Games champion, of course, is Chelimo there to the right of picture. It does look relaxed, I have to say. I get the feeling they're all quite happy for Chepngetich here to move to the front and to not be kicking on. Edna Kipling with that lovely rolling long stride of hers, so elegant. Salpeter here isn't running smoothly. She's running pretty strongly at quite a good pace, but I wouldn't say she's running smoothly. But what I would say is that I think she's probably moving a little bit quicker than that leading 5. And it'll be very interesting to see the 20k split, which is coming up, and whether or not she has closed on that leading 5, because it was 52 seconds at 19 kilometers, remember, and they've just gone through 20, the leading group, in 72.34.
So approaching halfway now, and would be interesting to see if Salpeter's managed to close that gap at all. One interesting feature about this course, Tim, is the athletes can see each other on each side of the carriageway. So on a point-to-point course, a looped course, often there will be buildings or other things which the athletes, once they've gone past, they're out of sight from the chasing athletes. And that can be to the advantage of somebody trying to get a gap or trying to win the race, but that doesn't happen here. If, this leading group will be easily visible to the athletes following them. So you can't get away and hide, which is one of the sort of tactics often used by athletes trying to win races.
Well, here's more significant news, Mara. We'd already knew that Rosa Dereje and Aga for Ethiopia had dropped out. So has Demise. Shure Demise of Ethiopia is another casualty. All three Ethiopians out. Now, we must remember, of course, that Ruti Aga is actually down for the New York City Marathon on November the 3rd. So, somewhat bizarrely, she'd accepted a place in the team here to race for Ethiopia, despite the fact that in, what, about 5 weeks' time, she has a spot in the New York Marathon been offered to her and accepted. So I suppose she came here thinking, I'll see how I feel. If it's not great, I'll drop out before halfway and save myself in New York. And she has done that. And of course, New York, while it doesn't have pacemakers, the biggest marathon in the world, is a very big payday. So, well, do the math yourself.
Real shame that the entire Ethiopian team is out, and shame if they've come here to a world championship, you know, not intending to finish. But don't forget, there is prize money on offer here. $60,000, I believe it is, for the winner. I'll just double check that, but reasonable prize money on offer.
Here is Salpeta now. Is she closing up on that lead group? She was 45 seconds down at 20k. Remember, it was 52 seconds at 19k. So she is closing, and that's quite a big gap to close. 7 seconds in the space of 1 kilometer. So the chase is on from Salpeta, who we know has been in fabulous form this year. I'd be surprised if she doesn't have a good run today. Now, there is that leading quintet passing a drink station as they head southwards with the ocean to their left, Doha Bay to the left, and we can have a look at the gap. There you can see, top right of your picture, that tiny group of the leading 5. And here is Salpeta, isolated, but she's got them in her sights. And one of the advantages of this circuit, I say circuit, it's of this up and down course on the Corniche, is that you can see the athletes ahead of you from a long, long way back. And Salpeta here is beginning to stride along purposefully. There's confirmation to the left of your screen that the Israeli is 45 seconds down. It was 52. Just watch, see at the 21 kilometer point, and indeed at halfway, whether or not that gap has reduced yet further. Of course, you have to remember that if this leading 5 is taking a bit of a breather, and Salpeta is working hard to close the gap, you can just about see her there in the far background behind Chepngetich's head. But if she's working hard to close up on them and they're taking a breather, well, they could surge and move away again.
Tim, I mentioned prize money earlier. The winner of any individual event at these World Championships wins $60,000 for winning. Silver medalist gets $30,000, bronze medalist $20,000, and the prize money continues down to 8th place, and that individual gets $4,000. The prize money for the relays is slightly different, but that is for the individual athletes.
Well, we're hearing of another casualty, and it's Bojana Jelčak of Croatia, I'm afraid. A 2:31 performer has stepped off the roadway, so they are beginning to mount those casualty numbers for whatever reason. Always sad when you've targeted major championships, and of course this is not a 100 meters where you can race 3 or 4 times a week if you feel like it, if you can find the races. Marathon runners generally race just twice a year, and very occasionally 3 times a year, but it's a tried and tested and proven formula, I think, isn't it, Mara, to race twice a year. You spend roughly a month gradually resting and easing back into a bit of jogging, and then you have a build-up of 4 to 5 months for your next challenge. I don't know what your template was.
Yes, I mean, the marathon season of city marathons is basically the spring and autumn, so March and April time, September, October, November time. There are other races at other times of year. The Osaka Marathon in Japan is in January, but then the championship races are always in the summer. So if you want to do spring, autumn and a summer championship, you have a very quick turnaround of 3 races in a year. Some athletes do race much more than that. Yuki Kawauchi from Japan, who we'll see in the men's marathon next Saturday, he runs a marathon once a fortnight in 2:10, 2:11. So formidable racer. But for most normal folk, let's say, who aren't as hardcore as Kawauchi, 2 to 3 marathons a year is about what you can manage.
Well, there are still plenty of athletes out on the road despite this growing number of casualties we've been bringing you. And the race wears on as the leaders have gone through 21 kilometers in 1:16:18. So add around 25 seconds to that for the halfway split, which we haven't been given officially as yet, but it does suggest they're on about 2:32.5 tempo, and I suspect up the front end it will accelerate. Further back, everybody having their own little battle, meeting their own challenges and doing the best they possibly can under the conditions. I admire them racing in these conditions enormously. It is warm, there's no denying that, around 31, 32 degrees centigrade at the start of the race, with a slight breeze coming off Doha Bay. But these five ladies have swatted aside the conditions and are racing supremely here just after halfway. Here is the sixth place at Salpetta, who at 21 kilometers, just checking, was 36 seconds down. So she has closed dramatically, Salpetta. It was 52 seconds a couple of kilometers back. And at 21 kilometers, Salpetta just 36 seconds down. She's closed no less than 16 seconds in 2 kilometers. If she maintains that, well, she'll catch them in the next 3 or 4K.
So first glimpse there on our screens of Tanimoto, one of the Japanese athletes. She's from the Tenmaya corporate team in Japan. A lot of the Japanese athletes are members of corporate teams. Tenmaya is a department store. And her teammate, Honami Maeda, recently won the Women's Olympic Trials race in Japan. So she will definitely be going to the home Tokyo Olympics next year. I think that's one of the other... Or maybe
just an update for Great Britain fans on
sorry, just
well,
trying
we're
to
going
check
to
the
see replay
picture.
now, I'm afraid, of yet another casualty.
Having registered a split
It is
20
Rocha, the
kilometres. We see
Portuguese,
Rocha,
who's
who
looked
was
so
in the
strong.
top
Looks like
10,
she's
and
suffering from
Rocha, unfortunately,
a cramp there,
picked up a
Portuguese.
problem.
And you really would have
And
expected
you
her
can see
to
the frustration
handle
on
these
the
conditions
face
with the
of the
warm
Portuguese
weather
athlete.
down in
So
the Iberian
Rocha, who is
Peninsula
gonna
that
try
they
and
have
keep going, but
enjoyed through the summer
it
months.
looks like tough work. But
She
Charlotte
gets
Purdue,
back going
as we
again.
say,
That's great to
not
see.
appearing on our 20
Very
kilometre
tough
split
indeed,
here on the
Amara, when
computer,
around
so
halfway
Yeah.
you have to stop and stretch
Britain,
out
unfortunately, has
some
had to,
stiffness or some cramp.
I'm
step
surprised
off
to see
the
her
road
like
as
that,
well.
because she looked like she was
Just out the
really
front.
doing well. Joglova there, Marcela Joglova of the Czech Republic. Their personal best of 2:36.53.
Well, you can see some of these athletes trailing that leading quintet. Vainio there with the blue headband.
Vainio-
Finland making use of the drinks very impressively, as indeed are all of them. And that is so essential. You've got to take massive amounts of liquid on board in these conditions.
Vainio of Finland that we just saw there, she is the youngest athlete in this field.
Irlainen there, also very experienced. So doing the best she can under the circumstances. Trofimova, the early leader. There she is in that white vest, just at the back of this single file line. Remember her leading for the first couple of kilometers. Not quite sure what was going through her mind then. It's easy to feel great. It's like you see so many of the big city marathons. You see somebody almost in cut-off jeans sprinting the first few hundred meters for their 15 seconds in the spotlight.
Vainio of Finland that we saw a moment ago is 21 years old, so the youngest in this field.
Well, this leading five, you can see extreme left of picture there, to the left of that motorbike, you can see Salpetta just in shot. She's probably no more than about 150 meters down. There we are, Chepngetich, Chelimo, Chepngetich, Johannes and Kipling, a trio of Kenyans here. What a contrast, a trio of Kenyans in the top five, a trio of Ethiopians. The trio of Ethiopians have dropped out today. Salpetta, well, this is fascinating. She's having to work so hard here, the former Kenyan. As you said, Mara, lived in Israel since 2008. She's a prolific racer. Just looking at the races she's done this year, she won Prague back in May, improving from 2:24 to 2:29. That was a massive improvement. She was second in the European Cup 10,000 meters in London earlier on this summer. I saw her at that race where she was beaten by Steph Twell, the Briton, though technically she was the winner as first across the line. Twell from Britain was not part of the European Cup race. She had won that competition last year in 2018, Salpeter. So she has that track racing pedigree, and she's got a building pedigree on the roads. But I wonder whether she wishes now she had gone with this pack, Mara, because it's still a big gap to be closed.
Yeah, but a lot can change. We're only just over halfway. She was closing that gap, but this group's still looking reasonably comfortable. The split we had at 21k, which I think is the halfway split, was 1:16.18, giving them a finishing time of 2:32 to 2:33. So they've sped up a little bit. They started off at around 2:34 to 5 speed. So I'm quite surprised actually by how fast they're going given the conditions. I mean, 2:32 to 3 is pretty good going.
Well, there seems to be a reluctance now, doesn't there? They've entered the third quarter of the race. There seems to be a reluctance to commit. They're running side by side. Chepngetich, Chelimo, the defending champion in that all-red strip of Bahrain. Nobody is really prepared to commit and push on. And I saw Johanna's there, yeah, at the back of that group, the Namibian, in the white vest, just glancing over her shoulder to see what sort of damage is going on behind. And I wonder if she's concerned that they've put in so many hard kilometers. And Salpeter there, 23 seconds back. She is closing relentlessly, is the Israeli. And I suspect Johannes is a little bit concerned there in the white vest at the back of that quintet, because they've been not jogging, but going much slower than one might have expected over the last couple of kilometers. And it has certainly allowed Salpeter of Israel to close the gap. There's no doubt about it. It's gone from 52 seconds to 23 seconds. She's made half a minute on them in the space of 3 or 4 kilometers. Look at that shot. Beautiful sweeping curve of the Corniche. The central business district to the right of picture is quite spectacular. One of the most impressive skylines in the world, there's no doubt about it, and growing every year. I can remember coming here 15 years ago and most of those blocks weren't even there.
The 2006 Asian Games were held here, and the marathon was held on this Corniche seafront in Doha, but that was held during the day, so it must have been even hotter than it is tonight in this first time midnight marathon.
Well, Chelimo accelerating there towards that drinks table. I wasn't quite sure if she was putting in an aggressive surge in this third quarter or if it was just an acceleration. But look at Salpeter in the background, like a metronome, maintaining that hard work tempo. She's striding on. She's wonderfully muscled, beautifully proportioned athlete is Salpeter. The track training she does to be a world-class track racer stands her in good stead. Your core strength absolutely critical for when so much of the rest of your body is fatigued, and she is moving well and using that towel yet again just to keep herself a little bit drier. Toweling down, checks her watch, gets a drink. Multitasking, I think you'd call it.
It's interesting, we saw her get a towel the previous time, and it's entirely up to the athletes within reason what to put on their personal drinks table, and she's obviously decided she wants a drink wrapped in a towel, and I'm wondering if she's had the drink really cold to help her cool down. So that all these athletes will have been thinking about their strategies for keeping cool in this race, whether it'll be ice on your neck beforehand, or putting water on your hair, or drinking a lot, or staying in the air conditioning, whatever. Salpeter's strategy, quite interesting there.
Sirona then isolated back in 7th place. The gap in front of her, I'm sure, to Salpeter is growing, however. Salpeter, by the way, at 24 kilometers, listen to this, just 11 seconds down. She is almost back in contact. She's been working so hard these last 5 or 6 kilometers to regain contact, and she's nearly there. I do wonder whether or not there's somebody in that leading group when she makes contact with them, if she makes contact, and she probably will, whether somebody in that leading group will surge again, because it will be a very cruel blow for Salpeter, who we have to remember is working quite a lot harder than that lead group for this last 20 minutes or so. And if they accelerate just when she gets to them, that would be tough. There's that leading group. but we are down to 4. Now, who's missing? Chelimo is there, I think.
Chelimo, Kipling, Johannes is there. So one has dropped. I think that's Chepngetich. When we get the next kilometre split, we'll confirm that, but we think it's Chepngetich who has been dropped from that lead group.
They're 24 kilometre split, by the way, 1:27.28. It was a 3:42. So they haven't really slowed that significantly, to be fair. It's just the fact that Salpeter has been surging. Her 24th kilometres were 3:30. So in the space of 1 kilometre, the 24th kilometre mid-race, Salpeter has closed 12 seconds on that lead group. She is tearing up the roadway on the Corniche. There's Grona and Dimov working together, as they have done since the gun, I think.
And they are in 9th and 10th place, according to the info we've received. So Dimov and Grona, you know, well down the start list in terms of PBs, but doing amazingly well. They started off steady and they're now in 9th and 10th place. So if any of the casualties ahead of them drop back, they could be well into the top 8 or even better.
Well, just looking, Maturonak's 24th kilometres are 3:45, so she is losing a little bit of ground on the lead group, but she's lost 15 seconds in the last kilometre over Salpeter, who has made sure there's a huge gap behind her. And you can see Salpeter right in the background in the white vest, right of centre, who is closing up on Chepngetich. Kipling to the right of picture, despite that strapping or tape on her right hamstring. Looking very comfortable in that bouncy style of hers, tallest in the group. Chelimo, with that little pitter-patter style in the all-red Bahrain, still giving a very good account of herself, and already has surprised me enormously.
I think all of this group look pretty comfortable, especially Kipling. This is exactly how Edna Kipling has won these races before. She just stays out of trouble, lets others do the work, just takes it easy and saves herself for the final few kilometres.
Well, just looking at the split for 25 kilometres, 1:31.01 is the overall time with Chelimo at the front, but 3:33 is the time down for this leading group. Now that's, I find hard to believe, because I don't think there's been a significant acceleration, not a visible acceleration of some 10 seconds or more. And Salpeter still closing. She's, what, 16 seconds down. Well, she's lost a little bit of ground, so maybe they have accelerated. Maybe one or two of them, and we saw Johannes a few minutes ago glancing over her shoulder, maybe one or two of them have noted that Salpeter is closing, recognized the danger, and upped their game, because they have been, well, half asleep in racing terms for the last 20 minutes or so. Or do you think that's unfair?
Well, I mean, this is where the marathon really starts to get tough. You're well over halfway, but you're still a long way from home. And this is where you can really suffer. Mentally, you need to keep it together and keep concentrating and not let your pace drop. And then once you get past 30k, past 35k, then you really can sense that you're on your way home. But this is where it really starts to get tough.
Well, there's the leading group at 25 kilometres. We are down to 4 to battle out the medals, but will Salpeter get involved or Chepngetich come back? 13 seconds Chepngetich has lost in the space of just the last 5 or 6 minutes. Salpeter is 3 seconds down on her, so soon, I'm sure, will move into 5th place. And here is 7th place Maturonak of Belarus. You've got to admire her application too, because she's been isolated for a long time now, but she just keeps churning out the kilometers. Behind her is Desijisa Mokonin of Bahrain, former Ethiopian, who again is isolated. But ironically, former Ethiopians are running better here than those in Ethiopian vests at these 2019 World Championships. If you've joined us over the last few minutes, the news is that all 3 of the Ethiopian starters have dropped out of this race before halfway, and 1 or 2 former Ethiopians are still battling in there.
Mokonin was looking like she was really struggling some time ago, but she's hanging in there. The Americans not far behind her, though, and I just wonder if they're going to swallow her up quite soon. The second half is always so much harder than the first half in a marathon. Because you're in a marathon, you're running well below your top speed. When you start the race, because you're well rested and you're fueled up and you're feeling good, you're ready to race, the first half can feel quite comfortable. I'm not going to say easy, but comfortable.
Ivanova goes through there for Belarus. Just counting some of these athletes going through. Bruce there for the USA goes through. And here they are reaching the northern end of the course. With this quartet being led by a short nose by Rose Chelimo. They're spread out across the road. Nobody really wanting to commit amongst these four. And maybe that is what has led to the gap closing, reducing so quickly from Salpeter to them. Salpeter now just checking is a couple of seconds away from Chepngetich. 25 kilometers, their time was 1:31.01. And looking at our charts, that puts them on schedule for, well, something around 2:32 finishing time, possibly 2:32 and bits. There is the view for Salpeter of the quartet in front of her. She is in 5th place. She's passed Chepngetich. And Tanimoto and Kim working together, Mara. Good to see.
Yeah, the North Korean team in the blue uniforms have done really well in this race. The North Korean Jo, is currently in 11th place, Ri in 12th place, and Kim in 14th place.
They're in Tanimoto and Kim there in 13th and 14th. Yes, so keep plugging away. A spot in the top 10 maybe on the cards, because you just don't know what's going to happen on the road up ahead of you. Who is going to hit a bad patch? Who is going to get a cramp or have a problem?
A lot of athletes, Tim, some athletes have said, right, I'm going to focus on Tokyo. I don't want to risk this high heat, very hot, humid race. But to me, this is the perfect opportunity for anyone aiming for the Olympics, because it's effectively a dress rehearsal for competing in hot weather. Plus, it's a great opportunity to get onto the medal podium if you're one of those 2nd or 3rd tier athletes. And apart from the 4 East Africans at the front, we've got Mazaronak, the 2 Americans, the 2 North Koreans, the Japanese Tanimoto in 13th. So very different race to what we typically see in the big city races, which are completely dominated by East Africans.
Well, Edna Kipling hits the front for perhaps the first time, and how significant is that? 1:37 on the clock. Johannes, Chepngetich and Chelimo are there. So in that pack there are 3 world titles, 2 for Kipling, 1 for Chelimo. There's a Commonwealth title through Johannes. Chepngetich, well, the 3rd fastest in history. Place your bets, ladies and gentlemen, because the final third of this race is about to unfold. Dimov having a fabulous race. Jo goes through as well. They are in Jo in 10th place, Dimov in 11th place. And here you can see the bottles being held out to the competitors with ice around them. That is a towel with ice around it with elastic bands. It enables the athletes to grab an ice cold towel and get a very welcome, refreshing few seconds with a wipe of the towel before throwing it aside. And of course the drink inside their bottles would have kept that much more cool as well. Well, we're hearing very sadly, for those of you concerned about British interests, that Charlotte Purdue has stepped off the road. That's a great shame. Young Charlotte Purdue, fabulous personal best in London last April of 2:25, and then just a month or so ago, a great run at the Great North Run in the northeast of England, where she ran a personal best of 68.08, I think it was.
Yeah,
Mara?
68.08, and she did a huge PB of 2:25 in April earlier this year in London. Both times bringing her up to 3rd on the UK all-time list.
Well, 27 kilometers, Chepngetich 1:38.17. Salpeter has lost a little bit of ground. 26 seconds, the gap between Chepngetich and Salpeter. Remember, it got down to, what, 12 seconds a couple of kilometers ago? So just as I expected, she's been working hard for, well, probably about the last 10 kilometers as a Salpeter, and she's closed the gap almost to within touching distance of the leading group. And they, at just that moment when the carrot of contact was dangled in front of her, they have accelerated and eased away. That's very frustrating for Lona Chemtai-Salpeter of Israel. 1:38.17, and at 27 kilometers, she's 26 seconds back. Still a long way to go. 27 kilometers, she's got 15 kilometers of road ahead of her to be covered. But let's have a look at that gap with this marvelous panoramic view of the Corniche. The quartet, they're working together at a slightly increased tempo. Their last kilometer has been 3:35, and Salpeter's 3:44. So the tables have turned. The leading quartet moving away from the Israeli. You can see her there, though, top center of picture. She's still only, what, about 150 meters down would be my guesstimate of that gap. 25 seconds, in fact, at 27 kilometers. So there's still a chance of Salpeter getting back to this group, and she has got to keep the faith, got to believe that somebody up ahead of her might have a problem.
Yeah, Edna Kipling still looking very comfortable in that group. I thought Rose Chelimo might have been struggling just a moment ago, but she's looking pretty comfortable as well, and used to the hot weather from the Asian Games, her win there last year in Jakarta. Johannes from Namibia carrying something now. I'm just wondering if that's I'm assuming that's a drink or a sponge. Something just to help her keep cool.
Now this is interesting. Chelimo accelerating towards that drinks table. She does it every time, gets it right. She's a very experienced, smart racer, is Rose Chelimo. You have to give a reigning world champion, an athlete who has got some very good marathon races behind her, due respect. But if you look at the caliber of this quartet, it's very, very hard to pick out any one athlete looking better than the others. I mean, what would you say, Mara, reading the body language, for example, of Edna Kipling? She has that long, loping, bouncy stride. She always looks good, it seems.
Yeah, to be honest, I've rarely seen Edna Kipling not looking good. She has this very easy, flowing style. She keeps out of trouble. I think she looks great. To be honest, I think all four of these athletes look pretty comfortable. I don't think they're working too hard at all. Johannes looks comfortable. She's had a great year, smashed the national record for Namibia at Nagoya back in March. I think it's all to play for with these four. I think they all look really comfortable.
I wonder which of them is feeling the easiest. Chepngetich made that early attempt to get away, probably an hour ago now. Has eased right back. Johannes looks comfortable to me. Here is Chepngetich. Now she is struggling. She's back in 6th place at 28 kilometers. Salpeter has passed her. As she shot her bolt, she's virtually jogging going through that drink station there. She knows it's not going to be a day in which she will be able to gain a medal. So tough situation, Mara, when you've been up at the front for 2/3 of a race, then you hit that bad patch and your race is run.
Yeah, sometimes you can hit a bad patch in a marathon and recover. You know, if you get a drink or you've had a stitch or something and it goes, and you can recover and get your mojo back. But I'm wondering if Chepngetich has some problem, cramp or stomach pains or something, because she's the difference between how she was going earlier and now is quite dramatic.
There is Salpeter pushing on with that quartet up ahead of her. Here is Salpeter getting water and a hat. Now, Galen Rupp at the Rio Olympics introduced a new tactic. He was given with his drinks during the Olympic marathon in Rio. He went on to take a medal, of course. A cooling hat, a hat with ice, I think, or certainly rods that were cooled inside it. And it certainly helped him. And at every drink station, he gained a hat. And Alberto Salazar, his coach, is a clever old fox, and it wasn't in the rules that you couldn't do it, but a lot of people said afterwards, well, these are supposed to be drink stations. They're not meant to be equipment stations. But nothing in the rules said you can't put an elastic band around something else attached to the bottle. I suspect it's covered by the rules now. I'll have to go and check. But Salpeter there, getting that cool hat and wearing it now. Matsuronak back in 7th place, the Belarusian, but she is some way back. 3:45 her last kilometre at 28k. She was a couple of minutes down. Yeah, 2 minutes and 1 second down.
According to the rules, of course, the athletes cannot accept assistance from people on the side of the course. They can take their drinks from the personal drink stations we've been seeing, and within reason, you can take ice or, as we've seen with Salpeter, a towel at each of the stations. So all these athletes have really been thinking how they're going to keep cool through these very difficult conditions.
Well, this leading quartet looking pretty comfortable. Everybody coping with the heat conditions in the way they best can. Many of them, of course, the smart ones, should have been practicing, I suppose, Mara, as well as acclimatization, various techniques to stay cool in the conditions. Here is Ayano Ikemitsu of Japan. She's a 2:26 performer with a cooled little sort of scarf around her neck. Presumably that's been iced and it's been dipped in icy cold water, something to keep her a little bit more comfortable, though she certainly doesn't look comfortable at this stage with, what, an hour and 45 on the clock.
Yeah, Ikemitsu looked like she was suffering there.
They've gone through 29 kilometers at the front, by the way. Chepngetich 1:45.33. So we're getting to that point of the race, that point of no return. We were talking earlier on today, Mara and I, about how up to about 30k in most marathons, athletes who perhaps want to save their best for another day and who aren't having a good day at the races can drop out. But after 30k, you've really committed. You're doing quite a lot more microcellular damage, and you have to battle on really if you go beyond 30k. Tanimoto, who is in 12th place at 28 kilometers, although the leaders have gone through 29 kilometers now. There's been 29k, 1:45.33, remember, a 3:42 clocking for them there. Chepngetich a 29th kilometre, or 28th kilometre, excuse me, 4:16. So she is losing ground drastically, is Visaline Chepngetich, I'm afraid.
So approaching 30k, and we're definitely starting to get into the dreaded hitting the wall territory, Tim. In the marathon, athletes can run out of carbohydrate stores at about 30k or after that, and once that happens, you have to burn fat to get energy, and it makes you feel terrible. You often see athletes really slowing down. These athletes, of course, are elite athletes. They're very well trained. A lot of their training will be designed to spare that precious carbohydrate source. But if any of them have gone too fast in the early stages for the shape they're in, we may start to see some of them suffering as we get into the final stages of this World Championship Women's Marathon. So Salpeter there still working hard to close the gap on the leaders. Currently in 5th place, so Salpeter chasing that lead group of 4 athletes. Behind her is Mazuronak of Belarus in 6th, and Chepngetich now in 7th place. Desi Mokonin of Bahrain in 8th. Roberta Grona, the oldest athlete in this field at 41 years of age, now in 9th place.
1:48 on the clock, and I'm just hearing that Sitora Kamidova of Uzbekistan has stepped out of the race as well. So, as expected, there are a few athletes who are having to call it a day. All marathons, of course, see athletes fail to finish, but in these very, very warm testing conditions, quite a few athletes this evening finding it just that bit too hard. Salpeter working hard, isn't she? There's a little bit more tension in those shoulders than there was a while ago. can tell you that at 29 kilometers, she's 43 seconds back. Now, I'm wondering if that challenge from the Israeli has wilted for good. She ran 3:47 for her 29th kilometer. This leading group 3:42, so they eased 5 seconds further away from her. And it's frustrating for Salpeter because they're just that little bit too far up the road for her to really get a sort of strong psychological pull, if you like, and close up on them. They are staying tantalizingly out of reach.
Yeah, it's a shame for her. If she'd been in this group, then they're not going much faster than her. In fact, she was going faster than them as she was closing the gap. So she could have been tucked in behind this group and saved her energy for the final stages. But she's really plugging away. And Rocha there of Portugal, she got going again after she stopped. And she seems determined not to give up, but clearly suffering.
Yeah, maybe the principle of wanting to finish is what is dominant in the mind of the Portuguese. Determined to keep going, it would seem. This quartet, well, they look comfortable, don't they? None of them really yet, for my money, has shown any particular sign of stress. And I think that's because they've been running not super slow, but not particularly quick for the last 30 or 40 minutes. They went through 30k in 1:49.13. That has them on schedule by my cards at almost exactly 2:34 pace, and that has been the case for probably the last hour and more. 1:49.13 at 30k. Be interesting to see how they cover this next 10 kilometers before that final push for the line. But like the four musketeers here side by side, they've worked together really well to stay clear of Salpeter. They have evidently repulsed the attack from Salpeter, albeit a distance attack, and the Israeli at 30 kilometers, 49 seconds back. So the gap back to Lona Chemtai Salpeter has grown a little bit more. They've run 3:40 for their 30th kilometer, this quartet. Salpeter, back in 5th place, has run 3:46. It's going to be very, very tough for her to claw her way back to them now. There it is, 49 seconds, the gap to Salpeter at this speed. That's probably, well, something around 250 meters, and she got to within 12 seconds about 20 minutes ago, 25 minutes ago, but that has wilted. I suppose what she's got to do, Mara, is just keep plugging away. Did you have a mantra that you told yourself when you were going through a difficult part of a marathon, if you were on your own working hard? And did you actually have anything that you kept repeating to yourself?
So my mental trick in this situation was to set myself short-term goals. So I'd say, right, get to the next lamppost, get to the next drink station, get to the next kilometre marker, so that you just keep your concentration and don't let those negative thoughts of, wow, this is hard, affect your performance. You just have to keep your focus. This is the toughest part of the race. They're really exhausted, coming up to 2 hours of running, and they're still 12 kilometers from the end. So this is where you really need to draw on your reserves of mental strength.
Well, talking of drawing on reserves, there's a huge number of athletes out there from the 69 starters still battling on and drawing on their reserves, but there are plenty of others. I say plenty of others, a few, and I've been trying to give you as many names as possible, who have had to step off the road and admit defeat on this occasion. But we can see here some of those who have refused to drop out. Rocha, we've seen her stop a couple of times, then battle on. Norbom also struggling, as indeed is Boklund. And that water is so welcome in hot conditions, pouring over yourself, even if you know that so much of it's going to be absorbed by your shorts and vest, and they'll be made all the heavier. What a sight that is. Those towers are quite majestic, constructed specifically for this race, those lighting towers. Never before have I seen a stretch of road over 2 English miles long, some 3.5 kilometers long, so well illuminated. Chalimo, the surprise of this quartet for me. Just looking at her card, Mara, while she is the defending champion, and she was 8th at the Rio Games and 2nd in Boston the year after Rio back in 2017, her year this year. Hasn't really covered it. She's not covered with glory. 9th in Tokyo, 41st at the World Cross Country.
Yeah, she only ran 2:30.35 in Tokyo, although it was difficult conditions. And on the 1st of September, she only ran 32.37 in the 10K in Tilburg, where Salpeter broke the European record. I mean, 32.37 is a fantastic time, let's be honest, but at this level, it's not that fast. And she hasn't had a great year, but she's having a fantastic race today and really getting out there to defend her title.
Well, I don't know if I've mentioned it yet, but Chitaye Shete of Bahrain, the former Ethiopian, has just left the medical center. We understand she too, another athlete who's had to throw in the towel, so to speak, putting in boxing parlance. Now Chelimo here, looks like she's just getting the bit between her teeth. This is remarkable. Chepngetich, the left of picture, who made an early attack and then thought better of it, knees back. The world number one to the left of picture. And Chelimo pushing on. Johanna's, I suppose we haven't really focused on her enough, Mara, because she has not hit the front once. She's just been tucked in there in 3rd or 4th place for this last half hour, very calmly getting on with the job at hand. And I wonder if she's running in within herself.
She looks very comfortable, and you're right, she hasn't done it. She hasn't done the hard work at the front of the group, which is exactly what you want to do. If others are willing to do that, you let them and you save your energy. This is a tactical championship race, so why would you waste your energy at the front of the race if you don't have to? She has a very high up arm action, but as we were saying earlier, big PB in the Nagoya Marathon, which she won earlier this year, 2:22.25, a national record. So despite being 39 years of age, same age as Edna Kipling, she's really blossoming in her marathon career.
Well, 1:56 on the clock. They have certainly at least half an hour and possibly 36, 38 minutes of running to come. And I suppose at this stage, in middle distance terms, it's like perhaps reaching the bell in a 1,500 meters or a mile race. You begin to gather yourself for that major surge over the latter stages. It seems a strange way of expressing it when they've still got some 10 or 11 kilometers to come. But they've got 3/4 of the distance under their belts. And now they need to switch into, rather than cruise mode, more into racing mode psychologically.
Yes, Tim, so they've passed 32 kilometers now, so I'm pretty sure that the next time they pass the start and finish area, that will effectively be the bell, and they'll be onto their last lap. So that will give them a real mental boost to know that they're onto the last of the 6 laps here in this World Championships marathon. Exactly 7 kilometers per lap, with the final 195 meters immediately just before the finish.
Well, I'm just hearing that there were 68 starters, in fact, tonight. Officially, originally there were 69. 68 starters in this race, and just over 1/4 have now retired. That means that almost 3/4 are battling on through the conditions here in Doha and giving a great account of themselves. And you know that every single one of the athletes who started tonight will have done their utmost to stay out on the course and race to the optimum level. Some just recognizing that it really was wise to step off the roadway. There is Sirona. They've gone through 32 kilometers, remember, in 1:56.25. And that 32nd kilometer was a 3:35. That is pretty crisp. Chepngetich, Chelimo, Johannes and Kipling. Salpeter, well, she is wilting. At 31 kilometers, she was 59 seconds down. It's almost a minute now, the gap between 5th place Salpeter and the leading quartet. Matsuronak here is in 6th place. She is 1 minute and 16 seconds down on Salpeter. Now, I wonder whether or not the European champion, Matsuronak, had the European champion at the marathon, can catch the European champion at 10,000 meters, because that's the 2 athletes we've got respectively, Matsuronak and Salpeter, in 6th and 5th. A little domestic or European continental battle going on there for the minor places at the moment. There's that quartet. Let's have a look at the gap. It is a minute, remember, almost a minute back to Salpeter, stretching way, way back down there along the Corniche as they head northwards. And that is a big gap. It was so small a little while ago. They're coming towards the top end of the loop, the northern end of the loop, near that Sheraton Hotel complex. There's Matsuronak. Now, where is Salpeter? We didn't pick her up there.
A bit further down the field, Tim, Viseline Chepngetich, who was one of the early leaders, struggling and now back in 10th place, which means that Roberta Groner of the USA is now in 7th behind Matsuronak, and Mizuki Tanimoto of Japan now in 8th, and Desi Mokkonen in 9th place.
Kari Dimov of the USA back in 13th place. So really surprisingly strong runs from Groner and Dimov for the USA. Matsuronak here. Now, we didn't see, and in fact, Matsuronak has moved into 5th place. She's passed Salpeter, and Matsuronak in 5th. And I'm just wondering if Salpeter is still out on the road, because we didn't see her in that long shot just now where we were able to see the big gap between this leading quartet and the chasers. We saw Matsuronak, but she was quite some way down on Salpeter at 31 kilometers. So I've got a horrible feeling that Lona Chemtai Salpeter might have stepped off the roadway, perhaps momentarily, perhaps permanently. We will check. There's the leading quartet. Let's wait and see who is the next through. But Matsuronak, the best of the Europeans, fittingly, as the European champion, is now in 5th place. Groner in 6th place. Yes, Salpeter, no mark coming up for her through 32 kilometers. I have a horrible feeling, for those of you watching with Israeli interests at heart, that Lona Chemtai Salpeter, between 31 and 32 kilometers, may have called it a day. Don't want to be too previous on this, so to speak, or give you wrong information, but our computers are telling us that Salpeter has not gone through 32 kilometers. She reached 31, and I think she might be gone. Matsuronak in 5th, Groner 6th, Tanimoto of Japan 7th, Kim of Korea in 8th, and Mokkonen of Bahrain in 9th, Chepngetich of Kenya still battling away back in 10th place, but very nearly 5 minutes behind this leading quartet.
Chepngetich last split, Tim, was 4 minutes 25, so her pace having gone from 3:35, 3:40 down to 4:25, so Chepngetich really struggling there, as is Mokkonen. Mokkonen's last split 4:07, but further up the field, Roberta Groner of the USA, Tanimoto Matsuronak, still going strong and trying as hard as they can to catch the leaders.
Well, checks her watch there, says Matsuronak, but nearly 2.5 minutes down at 32 kilometers. The 33-kilometer split for the leaders, just outside 2 hours. 33k, 2 hours and 4 seconds, in fact, for that leading quartet. Hannah's just towards the back of the group, but Matsuronak, this is a fabulous effort from her. This mental strength to battle on like this when she must be hurting Mara, and I'm sure too that she must be aware that if she'll be getting information from the sidelines, she's probably aware that she's got this 2.5 minute gap up to the leading quartet. The chance that there is a chance that one or even two of them will have a bad patch, may drop out, she could get a medal, but it's a distant hope in a way, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, she's run a lot of this race on her own. She's had to just grind out the pace by herself. She's stuck in there, but this is what you have to do at this stage of the race, and just hope that some of the leaders come back to you. She's in 5th place, which is a terrific position in a World Championship marathon. Let's face it, this is 5th best in the world. And we've just seen, we think, Salpeter dropping out. If any of these athletes dropped out, Matsuronak could be into the medal. So this is where you just have to really grit your teeth and hang in there and hope that you can catch up the leaders. But her gap to the leaders is 2 minutes 28 seconds, which is a big gap to close. That was at 33k. So they're into the final 10k now of this race, just 9 kilometers to go. and they'll soon be passing the start and finish area for the last time and setting out on the very final lap of this race.
I think we can say, Mara, with some certainty, I would love to be proven wrong, but that the winner and perhaps all three medalists are coming from this quartet, because they are cruising at the moment. They're looking comfortable, aren't they? 34 kilometers, there it is, 2:03:46, and that's a 34th kilometer, a 3:42, so they have settled into a nice steady rhythm now for many, many kilometers. But I don't think any of them really look like they're hanging on or struggling here, and hence I'm expecting some real fireworks over the last few kilometers. Somebody is going to lose their patience and push on. Chepngetich there, just a little glance out of the corner of her eye. I get the feeling she's thinking deeply about when is the right time to go. I have a feeling too that Edna Kipling will get her timing right. She's done it so many times, as you pointed out, Mara. Will she surge now? Will she respond to somebody else surging? In many respects, Mara, you could say that these remaining 8 kilometers is a long, long way. You know how we talk in marathon terms, when we talk about the marathon in English miles, we talk about it being 26 miles, and we say, well, actually, halfway is at 20 miles, because, frankly, so much racing comes in those last 6 miles, which is about 10K. So perhaps in a race of this nature, for athletes of this caliber who have been running very steadily for the last 45 minutes, we could say this is their halfway, and the racing begins very shortly.
Yeah, the racing should be starting soon. I mean, we're only 8 kilometers from the end now, only 5 miles. I mean, we're very much into territory now where any of these athletes could make an attempt to win. You know, you don't necessarily leave it till the last minute. Marathons are often won well before the finish. If any of these athletes threw in a surge now, got a gap, and then just kept it, they could be winning. So they'll all be thinking, okay, am I going to try to win this race? How am I going to do it? They might already have a plan in mind, and they're just waiting until that moment when they're going to throw in a surge. Some of them will be better sprinters than the others. Sprinting is always a bit of a an unhelpful word in marathon running, because it's so difficult to sprint after you've run 42 kilometers. But some of them will have much better finishing speed than others. Edna Kipling, we've seen her before, finished brilliantly in championship races. She tends to leave it quite late into the last 2-3 kilometers.
Here is Sirona back in 5th place, still plugging away. But is it just going to be a top 5 placing for her, or could it possibly be a medal for the reigning European champion? If you saw coverage of that fabulous European race last year in Berlin, the German capital, you will remember all too well that she suffered the most astonishing and unique, in my experience, the most astonishing nosebleed mid-race in the German capital. It was dreadful to see, but she cleared it up, raced on, and took gold in Germany. And she's running with equal determination tonight. Now, things are happening. Is this an acceleration because of the drink station from Chepngetich, or is she, has she decided enough is enough with 2 hours 7 minutes on the clock? She's running all the way to the far end, gets her bottle there. It's a long, long way. But Chepngetich here has surged for that drink station. And so often, not only do you see people fall and have accidents and clash into each other at drink stations, but they can be parts of the race where breaks are initiated. Athletes take advantage of a slowing and a little bit of chaos amongst their competitors, and they push on. And Mara, that does look like a surge from Chepngetich, with Chelimo, the defending champion, trying to hold on to her.
Yeah, so drink stations are the classic moment to put in a surge and try to create a gap. And Chepngetich really putting her foot down now. She's quickly got a gap on Chelimo, and a much bigger gap back to Kipling and Johannes.
Well, that'll be a very welcome sound, that last lap bell for these athletes, whether on the track or in a multi-lap marathon like this. It is so, so welcome. It signals a surge from Chepngetich, just as if, ironically, it were a middle distance race. This is a big, big push, and very quickly, in the space of probably a minute and a half, she has torn that little quartet asunder. It was looking very comfortable for a long, long time. Chelimo, the defending champion, in 2nd place, trying desperately to keep her within reach. Kipling And Johannes back in third and fourth, battling away, possibly now, from the way it looks, for the bronze medal. But Chepngetich here, Ruth Chepngetich, who has burst into the spotlight over this last year, is easing away, and that is a very significant gap. What is significant, I suppose, is how quickly the gap has been imposed. She is the third fastest athlete in history, and for many people, she might have done that under the radar a little bit, I suppose, that fabulous 2:17.08, which she produced when she won Doha. It is a high-profile race, but it's early in the year, and people tend to focus so much upon the spring marathon season of the Northern Hemisphere, the Londons, the Parises, the Bostons, so many others, and yet she did it back in January this year, comes to this race very fresh, does Ruth Chepngetich. She won the Istanbul half marathon, the Gitu half marathon in a Japanese all-comers record of just outside 66 seconds. She sharpened up with a 10K, then she won the Bogota half marathon at high altitude. So she comes here with not having run a marathon in around 9 months, giving a real freshness to those legs, and it's unfolding here all too clearly.
Yeah, real injection of pace from Chepngetich, and look at the gap she's created. It's enormous, and she doesn't look like she's suffering that much. It'll be really interesting to see what the next kilometre split is. We'll bring it to you as soon as we get it, and she's really going for it. She's destroyed this quartet, but Rose Chelimo not too far behind, but huge gap back to Kipling. I'm surprised that Edna Kipling hasn't gone with this more.
Well, what I'm wondering is whether or not Chelimo, in trying to go with this third from Chepngetich, might have done herself some harm, because the Kipling and the Namibian have now got a target. Johannes and Kipling can work together to try and catch the defending champion. Kipling, who has benefited in recent months from training in E10 in Kenya up in the Rift Valley, and of course in Eldoret, where she's got a tried and tested format with her family supporting her, will work hard these next few kilometers, will surge, I'm sure. She is so strong in the closing stages. If on this occasion at the age of 39 it leads just to a medal, well, that's not bad going, when in the past it has led to big gold medals and titles. But Chepngetich here, wow, that is a significant acceleration. I suppose, Mara, what we have to remember is that for an athlete who's run 2:17, she's been operating at 2:34 tempo for 2 hours, and that is, if not jogging, it should be comfortable even in these conditions.
Yeah, if you can control the conditions and your response to the hot weather, 2:34 compared to 2:17 will feel very easy for somebody like Chepngetich. Let's not forget, she threw in a 3:13 kilometre way back in the early stages, and that didn't seem to take much out of her, so she's clearly got a lot left.
Well, we can take another look now at the winning move, or possible winning move, by Ruth Chepngetich, the world #1. Here it is at the drink station, approaching the bell, the final lap of 6. There she goes, easing through what was the start line. She will pass in about 150 meters the finish line, and with 1 lap to run, she used that drink station as a catalyst to burst away from the other 3. And Chepngetich at 36 kilometers has a 7-second lead. Her 36th kilometer, wait for this, a 3:19. Well, earlier in the race, remember, she threw in that insane split. Was it a 3:13, the 11th kilometer? Well, she's waited another 25 kilometers or so before throwing in this one, and it's been a big acceleration. 3:19 from Chepngetich to Chelimo's 3:25, and that is why the gap has opened up now to the defending champion. Here is Chelimo. What do you reckon, Mara?
I think she looks okay. I mean, she's at the last split time, she was 7 seconds behind. She's really giving it everything to stay with Chepngetich. Johannes and Kipling are some 25 seconds behind the leaders, so they're about 17 seconds behind Chelimo. So now these big gaps have established. As long as the speeds the different runners are running at don't vary that much, these gaps are going to be very difficult to change. Even if Chepngetich starts to slow down, you know, Chelimo and the other two have to be going a lot faster to close that gap. So Chepngetich really putting her foot down now and going for that win well into the last lap now, and they'll, as soon as they approach the final turn and head back towards the finish, that will give them another mental push. But Chepngetich really looking comfortable. She looks like she's got several more gears left.
Well, I suppose so. She should have. She's a 2:17 performer. She's been operating way outside 2:30 for some 30 kilometers, 35 kilometers. She is a typical new generation road racer from the Rift Valley. She has no road track form at all, Ruth Chepngetich. I don't have any personal best for her over middle distances, long distances on the track. She has a road 10K best, which is impressive, but she's just run a 37th kilometer in 3:30 and has opened up a big gap here on Rose Chelimo. It's 12 seconds, in fact. It was 7 seconds, I think, in the previous kilometer. So Chepngetich is pummeling away the opposition, and they are gradually having to submit.
So Ruth Chepngetich put in that fast kilometer to get the gap, but now she's done a 3:30, which isn't that much faster than the others. So she's got the gap, and now she just has to maintain it. So through 37 kilometers, only 5K to the end now for Ruth Chepngetich, who's bidding for her first major world medal.
Well, I mean, she's come, if not from nowhere, she has rocketed up to quite astonishing status. Chepngetich, I mean, her personal best for the half marathon earlier on this year is 65:30. Her personal best for the marathon, of course, at Dubai, as we said, 2:17:08. I mean, that's only, what, some 6 seconds off Mary Kaitani's women's only world record, although, of course, in Dubai they do run with the men. That is a mixed race time. But you can see Chepngetich here actually lapping athletes now, and that is quite something on a 7-kilometer circuit. Doesn't she look calm, though? Totally focused.
Dubai, very fast course, but amazing improvement. She started off at 2:22 back in 2017, then got down to 2:18 last year, and then 2:17:08 in January this year. So amazing improvements from Chepngetich. Further down the field, Mazaronak of Belarus still in 5th place, Roberta Groner of the USA in 6th, and Tanimoto of Japan currently in 7th place.
Well, Chelimo, I suspect, just wanting to stay clear of Kipling, and Johannes now. She will be fully aware that Chepngetich here is operating on a different plane. Let's not forget that Rose Chelimo has never broken 2:20. Indeed, her personal best is only a click inside 2:23, so on paper, she's almost 6 minutes slower than Ruth Chepngetich, and frankly, that puts Chepngetich in a different class. That's a huge difference. That's a mile quicker, Chepngetich is, when they're both running at their best, than Chelimo. Chepngetich here passing this sprint station for the last time. What a good job all the volunteers in this event have done. It's been superbly organized, this marathon, and all the worries about the heat causing unprecedented numbers of athletes to drop out have not been realized. The race has gone supremely well for the organizers, for the majority of the 68 starters, and Chepngetich there surely heading for the world title, and yet another Kenyan gold.
So Ruth Chepngetich just through 38K now. Her last split was 3:31, so slowed by just a second. But the damage she did with that 3:19 kilometer and got the gap, she's now 17 seconds ahead of Rose Chelimo at 38K.
Yes, I can't see her being caught here. Chelimo here has got a much shorter stride, not quite the same aggression to her form. Chepngetich has that slight forward lean to the torso when you've got the bit between your teeth, whereas Chelimo here almost looks like with the head slightly back. She's almost leaning backwards a little bit. She's surviving, I think, surviving well, and that's what marathon running so often in the latter stages is all about. And when you get to around 38, 40 kilometers an hour and you're really hurting what do you tell yourself at that point? You know, do you just say this is going to end soon? Is there anything you can do? Can you go into a sort of trance?
So at this point of the race, they're only 4 kilometres from the end, which really isn't far. So you've just got to keep it together. You're really near the end. All you've got to do is stay out of trouble. Just don't let anything bad happen, like, you know, you really lose your pace really slows. You've just got to keep it together, and this really is the time for setting short-term goals like I was talking about earlier. Just get to the next kilometre marker, and then it's only 3K. Get to the next lamppost. Whatever it is, just keep ticking over. Just keep doing as best you can. Because also, everybody is suffering at this stage. You know, with Chepngetich, she's got this huge gap. All she needs to do is just keep it going, keep her foot on the accelerator, and she can win this race.
Well, this is how quickly the leading pair are moving away from Johannes and Kipling, who are battling out third place. Chepngetich ran her 38th kilometre in 3:31, Chelimo in 3:36, but Johannes and Kipling locked together 3:51. They were 15 seconds slower over the last kilometre, so they perhaps are playing a cat and mouse game, watching each other. Maturonak is still about 3 minutes down in 5th place. I don't think she's going to threaten that little dust-up for the bronze medal, although she's had a fabulous run, the Belarusian. But who will take the bronze medal between the Namibian Hilalia Johannes and Edna Kipling, who has won 2 golds, took the silver in London 2 years ago. Can she complete the set and get a bronze here today?
I'm sure she'll desperately be wanting to get onto that medal podium. She's currently 3 apiece with Catherine Endereba. If she gets a 4th medal, that'll be an incredible achievement. But they're now a minute behind Chepngetich. So Chepngetich has taken a minute out of Johannes and Kipling over, what, 2 or 3 kilometres. So incredible injection of pace from Chepngetich.
Look at Chepngetich here. Well, she's been very, very patient after she got over that initial little brainstorm earlier in the race where she surged for 2 or 3 kilometres and tried to break the field. Maybe somebody yelled advice at her, told her to get back and wait and be patient. I don't know, but she tried to attack very early in the race, inside the first 10 kilometres, then eased right back. Now she is hitting the straps and really tearing up the roads of the Corniche, because this surely is an athlete heading for the 5th Kenyan gold at these World Championships. You can go back through the champions tables, and Dereba winning in 2003 and again in 2007, and then Kiplingat's brace in 2011 and 2013. That's Maturonak back in 5th place, still going well. 39 kilometres for Chepngetich in 2:21:16. She's run a 3:33. Chelimo in 2nd place was 17 seconds down at 38K. How is she coping? She'll go through 39K any second.
So Rose Chelimo looked like she had a snack or something there. I don't know if perhaps it was a gel. At this stage of the race, any amount of sugar or caffeine is what you want. Chepngetich looking very comfortable there. She really doesn't look like she's about to win the World Championships. So onto the other side of this carriageway for the last time for Chepngetich, and she'll soon be approaching the very final U-turn.
There will, of course, if Edna Kipling can beat Johannes to the bronze medal, be triple celebrations up in the Rift Valley, because Chepngetich and Kipling both running in Kenyan colours, and Rose Chelimo, the defending champion, of course, of Kenyan descent. She is running in the colours of Bahrain, but she'll have plenty of family back in Kenya roaring her on for this one, I'm sure. So in the latter stages of a marathon, you have to have made sure you've taken plenty of liquids on board, and of course gels are very much the modern era method of replenishment as well. Mara, I don't know if you use them, but we can see Chelimo here, yes, biting the top off a gel, I think. Did you employ that tactic, or that? Yeah. Did you employ that?
So I actually use drinks. I found gels a bit too sticky, but gels are really popular. It's a very individual thing, whatever works for you, and a lot of marathon runners use gels. They're quick and easy. You get this big hit of carbohydrate, and some of them have caffeine in them. So especially at this stage of the race where you're really struggling, any kind of sweetness or caffeine can give you that mental boost as much as anything. It does take time to digest, but even just having something sweet in your mouth can give you that mental boost to hang on. So Edna Kipling now.
Chelimo at 39 kilometers, 23 seconds down. And there is Edna Kipling. Now, where is Johannes? Where is Helalia Johannes? She, according to the splits, at 39 kilometers. Johannes 5 seconds ahead of Kipling. So we see Chepngetich begin to close in on another athlete that she will be lapping. That's one of the Palestine athletes, I think. Here is Chepngetich making the final turn at the top end of the course with 2 hours, 24 minutes and 40k. 2:24.42, a 17:19 for Chepngetich over the last 5 kilometers. She now will see the gaps there. Chelimo, she passes the reigning champion for just another very few minutes, going in the other direction. And passing Palestine athlete is Mayad Al-Sayad, I think. Chepngetich is lapping her. Chelimo negotiates that final turn, and what a welcome sight it will be when the finish line comes into view for all these athletes, but in particular for those who are going to secure a medal. Now, just looking, we saw Helalia Johannes, sorry, we saw Edna Kipling a couple of minutes ago. We didn't see Johannes, but there is Johannes. So Johannes then in the 3rd place. She has broken away from Kipling. There in the background is the 2-time champion, who at the age of 39 may well, Mara, so frustratingly be heading for 4th place.
Yeah, she's just about 5 seconds behind Johannes at 39k, but Edna Kipling looking like she's struggling there. Yeah, couldn't quite stay with Johannes, but still only 5 seconds in it.
Well, Edna Kipling looks spent there, doesn't she? There is definitely a drop in her mojo there. She negotiates that turn. What, a minute and a half, maybe slightly more, behind Chepngetich, who is storming down the Corniche in a southerly direction towards gold, surely. Rose Chelimo, the Bahrainian, with her gold medal from 2017, tucked safely away at home, looks to be heading for a silver on this occasion. And Helalia Johannes, the Commonwealth champion, does look indeed to be heading for bronze. The gap at 40 kilometers between the Namibian and Kipling, the Kenyan, some 18 seconds, and that is a big, big gap. Kipling, I think, has hit the wall. I don't think Johannes has put in a massive surge. I think Edna Kipling has finally had to let go and allow the Namibian to ease away. But what a run this is from Ruth Chepngetich. It's only her 5th marathon. It's going to be many, many minutes slower than her personal best set in Dubai back in January, but that matters not a jot. This is not a night for fast times. It's not a night to super analyze splits. It's a night to just enjoy the fabulous racing here on the Corniche in Doha. And this young lady, Ruth Chepngetich, has looked quite supreme over the final critical section. Look at the relaxed flailing of the arms there from Chepngetich, and it's I don't mean that in a negative way. She's moving really smoothly, great coordination. The gap to Rose Chelimo is growing and growing. At 40 kilometers, it had become a yawning gap, 30 seconds, almost another minute back to Johannes in the bronze medal position. And that frustrating 18-second gap between Johannes and Kipling may doom the experienced Kenyan at the age of 39 to 4th place, not the 3rd she might have wanted to complete that medal collection. But what a fabulous run this has been from Rose Chelimo. In many respects, it's been the run of the race, because she was certainly not expected to feature. Many people had written her off because of the way her 2019 up to now had gone.
Absolutely, she hasn't had a good year this year, but she did prove at the Asian Games last year that she's good in hot championship races, and you can see how spent she is there. She's just hanging on for that final kilometre or so. So Ruth Chepngetich now through 41k, so just over 1k to go for Chepngetich of Kenya. Her last split 3 minutes 36, so slightly slowing as well, but it was that 3:19 kilometre where she got the gap and has just kept it.
Well, there's the form of Chepngetich. Still good, steady rhythm. Still good length to that stride. Plenty of power there. You almost get the feeling, don't you, she could cover another lap, frankly. I think she's running within herself. It's been a truly dominant performance when it came to the crunch. Prior to that, really, she was keeping her powers, her ability cleverly veiled, running alongside the other three, but was waiting to explode over the final circuit. Here is Johannes in third place, surely heading for a rare medal for Namibia. Third place for her would mean bronze, and of course, Namibia, you have to think of Frankie Fredericks, the great sprinter back in the 1990s, who was a world champion at 200 meters, one of the fastest men ever at 200, at 100 as well. He was no slouch. I remember seeing him run an incredibly fast 100 in the pouring rain and cold of Helsinki. That was a tough performance, and this has been a fabulously tough performance today from Johannes. And for Kiplagat, well, it has been yet again a fantastic run. Father Time catches up with all of us, and she has defied that man again and again and again. But perhaps on this occasion, the year's just catching up with her. She won't want to hear that. She won't want to acknowledge it. Of course, neither will her support team. And a word, of course, just for those support teams. Each of these athletes represents just the tip of a whole team effort. Nobody's done a better job than that team behind Chepngetich.
Yeah, amazing run from Chepngetich. That 3:13 split early on, and then 3:19 to break that final group of four. Just brilliant. And Edna Kipling, she'll be disappointed perhaps not to be in the medals, but fourth place in the World Championships. She was winning silver medals way back in 1996 as an under-20, and now approaching her 40th birthday. To finish fourth in the world is pretty impressive.
Well, Chepngetich, her 41st kilometre, she's gone through in 2:28.28, was a 3:36. Even over this final kilometre, she's taken 41st kilometre, she's taken 13 seconds out of Rose Chelimo. And Chelimo actually wilting. She'd run 3:49 for her 41st kilometre. Johannes, 3:41. So the Namibian is catching Chelimo pretty quickly, but I think almost certainly is going to run out of road. The finish line is going to be the saviour of Chelimo and her silver medal. Here is the champion in waiting, Ruth Chepngetich, a class apart on the occasion that matters most in 2019. And there she crosses the start line, 195 metres to run, sprints for the line. Look at the freshness. Look at the power as she surges towards the line. The first gold medal of these 2019 IAAF World Championships goes to Kenya. Ruth Chepngetich takes gold in the women's marathon. That winning time for Chepngetich, 2:32.43 unofficially. For a long, long time, it looked like they were heading for a 2:34. She's cranked that down by a couple of minutes over the closing kilometres. But there was so little emotion shown, such focus for the last 2.5 hours and more. And now she breaks into a glorious smile. And here comes Rose Chelimo. She has battled on and really worked for this silver medal after what has been a moderate year of other results.
Yeah, brilliant silver medal from the Asian Games champion Rose Chelimo. She's really overcome the slightly disappointing year she's had and won a brilliant silver medal. Couldn't quite stay with champion Chepngetich, but brilliant run from Rose Chelimo.
Well, the conditions, of course, have been beaten by these athletes. Everyone who finishes here today, as we see Chelimo cross the line for a super silver for Bahrain. Frankly, a brilliant run from her. 2:33.46, just over a minute down, 63 seconds down. And it is indeed Namibian bronze for Helalia Johannes. She strides towards the line, looking strong still, must be utterly exhausted. But the adrenaline is flowing, and she crosses the line to take third place.
Well done. Congratulations. Well done, well done, well done.
Johannes' time 2:34.15. And Ruth Chepngetich there being congratulated by dignitaries and her support team alike. Seb Coe there congratulating the first champion to be crowned at these Doha 2019 World Championships. So just to give you those times again, Chepngetich's time 2:32.43. Chelimo in second place, taking silver for Bahrain, 2:33.46, exactly 63 seconds down. And Helalia Johannes, the bronze medal, 2:34.15. A further 29 seconds down. There is Edna Kipling. She has indeed eased right back on the throttle. I'm sure a lot of that slowing due to the fact she knew the bronze was gone and that there was no threat from behind. She finishes what is frankly a fabulous fourth for a lady who in around 50 days' time is going to reach her 40th birthday. It's not to be an early birthday present in the form of a medal for Edna Kipling, but nonetheless a great effort.
Come here, please, please. You have that one with
The Kenyan flag has been so much in evidence over this last 25, 30 years since the distance running revolution came out of the Rift Valley in big numbers. And there may not be a Belarusian flag flown today because that is a fifth place for Volga Maturonak. What a good run from her. Edna Kipling in fourth, 2:35.36. But Maturonak there, having battled away, really has applied herself so well to keep herself in with a shot of a medal. Had anybody in front of her wilted significantly, it wasn't to be, but nonetheless, great effort from the Belarusian, 2:36.21. For me, this is all superhuman racing, having experienced the heat and humidity here in the city for the last 2 or 3 days. That was fabulous racing from all the ladies finishing this race today, and those who have battled on so hard before having to give in to the conditions, but in particular for the three medalists. Great racing here on the Corniche. Ruth Chepngetich then gold for Kenya, Rose Chelimo a silver for Bahrain, Helalia Johannes the bronze for Namibia.
The three for you. It's in your hands.
Well, Ruth Chepngetich winning by over a minute, raised a sprint over the final 100 meters, can you believe? A very impressive sprint too, almost middle distance style. Punched the air as she broke through the tape here on the Corniche. And her dominant run, well, she lived up to what the record books, the ranking books say. She was world #1 coming into the race. She's world #1 going away from the race, but she has a gold medal and a world title to add to just that ranking. This is a young lady who surely can go faster in the right conditions. Who knows? Maybe that elusive world record of Paula Radcliffe, albeit in a mixed race, can come her way. And what a run here from Roberta Grona. The American squad here are not the most highly heralded of names, but this, a 6th place Roberta Grona of the USA, is quite astonishing. That in its own way is one of the biggest surprises of the race, if not the biggest surprise. Grona, at the age of 41, taking 6th place. That is magnificent. Nothing short of magnificent. She's a 2:29 athlete, and that run really does show what a leveler these conditions are and how cerebral this race has been in its demands on the athletes. 7th place, they're going to Mizuki Tanimoto of Japan. Tanimoto, all smiles as she crosses the line there. Of course, Tanimoto and her teammates racing today, all foregoing the opportunity to run in the Olympic trials for the Japanese, which were just a couple of weeks ago. Tanimoto delighted with that top 10 placing. Well, that will be the shot on the front of many Japanese papers tomorrow, where, of course, distance running, marathon running in particular, is so revered. Many of the Japanese people follow marathon running and the big ekidens involving university teams and so on. The corporate teams get involved too. They follow it with, they almost deify their top athletes. But Tanimoto making the top 8, indeed the top 7, because that's where she finished, in fine style, and looks surprisingly fresh too, doesn't she? Well, still big gaps between the athletes, as you might expect. Behind Tanimoto, we're expecting Kim of the People's Republic of Korea to come through. Tanimoto is a 2:25 athlete, 7th place for her here today. 2:39, some 14 minutes down on her lifetime best.
Finisher approaching the 9 now. This is Kim Ji-hyang of Korea Republic.
And here is Kim, the People's Republic of Korea. 24 years old, the athlete with a best of 2:28. She's going to finish just outside 2:41 here. She won Pyongyang back in 2016 when she was just 21 years old. But, well embedded in the top 10 there. 8th place for Kim Ji-hyang. Good running here from the Canadian, Lindsay Tessier. What a welcome sight that will be for her to get to that finish line in good order and make 9th place. Brilliant running from her.
What a performance from her as well.
So many big names dropping by the wayside today here, including that Ethiopian trio who so many expected to be battling for the medals. 41-year-old Lindsay Tessier. So 2 41-year-olds in the top 9, can you believe? She's the Canadian over 40 record holder. Her time here, 2:42.03. And coming through for 10th place is Jo Unok of Korea again. So 2 Koreans making the top 10. Another of the Japanese coming through in 11th place, just outside the top 10, perhaps frustratingly there, is Madoka Nakano. It's one of those occasions where you can give 101%, and it just is not enough to get where you'd like to be. Nice acknowledging of the organisers and the fans who have sat through this race over the last 2.5 hours and more. Nakano's time 2:42.39. Well, there is the scene on the Corniche with local time at 2:45 in the morning. The top 10 are in, and there they are. And the medalists, well, the title going to Ruth Chepngetich, the 5th Kenyan gold in the history of the World Athletics Championships Women's Marathon, 2:32.43. She sprinted for the line to make sure that gap was over a minute ahead of the defending champion Rose Chalimo of Bahrain. She took silver. Namibia's Hilalia Johannes took fabulous bronze, and the rest of the top 10 they're giving absolutely everything, with Kipling in 4th place, a season's best. Well, a chance to look at the top 3 once again. Their finishing form. What a sprint that was over the last 80 meters or so from Ruth Chepngetich. The world number 1 is the world champion. No surprise there. It went to form. And Rose Chalimo, that didn't go to form. The defending champion, we expected to not do as well as get the silver. And Hilalia Johannes, well, the Commonwealth champion for Namibia, taking a beautiful bronze in 2:34.15. It wasn't a night for fast times. Dimov coming through in 13th place for the USA. Her time, a season's best of 2:44.35. Brilliant running still for these unheralded names from North America. The Canadian Lindsay Tessier, 9th place. Roberta Grona, astonishing at the age of 41, finishing in 6th place. Matsuronak of Belarus, the first of the Europeans home, seeing off the challenge of Salpeter of Israel, and just a word of sympathy for her, because she raced so well, worked very hard mid-race to catch the quartet ahead of her. Many kilometers on her own, running faster than the leading group, but as she got near, so they accelerated and moved away, and maybe that dispirited her, and indeed was a contributory factor to her eventually failing to finish. Very frustrating and disappointing for Israeli followers of Salpeter, I know. But she will be back. She's had a fabulous 2019. Today, the first blemish on her card of this year.
Huge thank you to all of them for their efforts, as we see.
Well, this is Ri Kwangok of the People's Republic of Korea. Fabulous packing from them. They had Kim in 8th place, they had Joe in 10th place, and now they have Ri in 14th place. A time, Ri Kwangok, 2:46.16. They continue to come through, and so much credit must go to Visaline Chepngetich. She started as one of the pre-race favourites in Kenya's colours. Of course, that's a foregone issue, but it didn't go right for her today. The 29-year-old coming across the line there in 15th place, outside 2:45, indeed outside 2:46. Chepngetich, well, she was 20th at the World Championships back in 2015. She's gone a few places better tonight, 5 places better 4 years later. She again will be back. She won the Paris Marathon, one of the very quick European circuits, back in 2016. She will fight another day. As we see Marta Galimani of Spain coming through, struggling through the last 100 meters. So different her form to that of the champion Ruth Chepngetich, who raised her game and sprinted that last 100 meters. Marta Galimani from Spain here, able to smile because she knows the suffering will soon come to an end. She's a 2:30 performer from earlier on this year. She's a late bloomer as well. At the age of 33, she ran 2:30.15 in Rotterdam back in the spring. But Galimani in 16th place.
Well done. Would you like some water? Some water. Yeah, well done. If you're going to come.
So there, the winning rhythm of the eventual champion Ruth Chepngetich, who hit that yellow line with about 100 meters to go and sprinted like she'd got several opponents beside her, but they were way, way back. She'd destroyed the field to win this gold medal here in Doha. And that glorious gold for Chepngetich will have had them punching the air up in the Rift Valley, in hundreds of villages, hundreds of towns where distance running is so, so admired. It is the national sport of Kenya, there's no doubt about that. And things have picked up where they left off, really. The Kenyans, so often dominant in the distances, were certainly dominant tonight through the figure of Ruth Chepngetich. Glorious celebration there with her support team from the Kenyan squad. Of course, they are not as strong in the full portfolio of track and field events as many other nations, and it means so much more to them to get it right in the disciplines where they do know they have real strength, and that of course means in the middle and long distances. And you can bet there'll be more Kenyan gold over this coming 10 days. Charlotta Fogberg of Sweden finishing in 18th place. Marta Galimani of Spain was 16th, as I said. Natasja Ivanova of Belarus in 17th. And then Fogberg of Sweden in 18th place. 2:49.17. Still fabulous running from all those ladies to get down there a long, long way below 3 hours in these conditions. Punishing. I'm sure many of them will say afterwards they have never had to work so hard for a time of that nature. Well, let's just confirm those results for you now from this first medal event of these 2019 World Championships here in Doha. And fittingly, perhaps it was the toughest event for the ladies. The marathon, 42 kilometers, won tonight by Ruth Chepngetich of Kenya, 2:32.43, just over a minute ahead of Rose Chelimo of Bahrain. Hilalia Johannes taking an unexpected bronze for Namibia. Brilliant run from her as so many other big names dropped by the wayside. Edna Kipling at 39, just unable to make the rostrum, a fighting fourth for her. Matsuronak, the European champion for Belarus, taking fifth. And 41-year-old Roberta Grona of the USA in sixth place, along with Tessier, also 41 for Canada, down in ninth place.